Tensura, Tiamat. Chapter 1, Wishes. Within a completely white space, a woman was sitting in Caesar while looking around in confusion. That's weird. I could have sworn I was in my living room having tea. Where am I? The woman muttered. You are in a different space from reality. But don't worry, nothing bad will happen to you. An ethereal voice echoed into the blank space in response to the woman's murmurs. The woman looks around, looking for the person who answered her, but there was only white space. Excuse me, who's this? Oh, my apologies. I forgot to introduce myself. I have many names, but I prefer to be called Po, the voice responded. The woman tilted her head and couldn't help but giggle. That's a lovely name you have, Mr. Po. Haha, thanks for the compliment. The woman couldn't see it, but she was sure the person behind the voice was smiling at the compliment. Excuse me, Mr. Po, may I ask why I'm here? I was just having tea, and out of nowhere, I showed up here. I would be very grateful for an explanation, the woman asked politely. Oh yes, how could I not tell you this in advance? I apologize for my mistake. You are here because you won the Divine Lottery. Sorry, the Divine Lottery? I don't remember participating though, she replied in confusion. Yes, you weren't participating, but your children were. Hearing that, the woman's eyes widened in shock, and her hands began to shake. My children? But they. Yes, I know. I'm sorry I made you remember such painful things, the voice said with pity. She was just a normal woman in her 40s and 50s. She might be a little old, but she had the beauty of a true MILF. However, even with her great beauty, she had never found her love from a young age, either male or female. So, in her 30s, she had adopted 6 children, 3 girls, and 3 boys. She lived happily with them for 13 years, until one fateful day. Her 6 children, who were studying at the same school, died in a traffic accident while on their way to school on a private school bus. She was devastated by the accident that took her entire family away. She went into a deep depression, and many times tried to commit suicide. What saved her was the memory that her children left her. The toys, books, movies, and games they left for her. She understood that killing herself wouldn't solve anything and that if she died, she wouldn't be able to remember them. To remember them and lessen her depression, she started watching the anime her children saw, as well as playing and reading the games and manga they collected. She had entered a world she had never known before, the world of games, manga, and anime, and she was happy as she felt connected with her children doing so. It had been 2 years since her children died, and she would be lying if she said she was over it, so hearing that her children were participating in a lottery shocked her. The owner of the voice observed her shocked and confused expression, and explained, I think I should start from the beginning. See, when someone dies, there are some possibilities for them. Those who have a pure soul will go to heaven, those who have a corrupt soul will go to hell, and those who have a neutral soul can reincarnate to live again. Your children all had pure and kind souls, a reflection of the good upbringing you gave them. Be proud, you are a marvelous mother. He continued, your children are living in paradise, and they won the lottery that God made. However, instead of using the prizes, they gave them to you. Normally you would only have the choice of having the prize, but as you are still alive, you have 2 choices. The first is to accept the prize, which is to be reincarnated in a different world of your choice with some wishes, and the other is to have some wishes fulfilled on Earth. The woman listened attentively, and then asked in a trembling voice, could I use one of the wishes to see them one last time? The voice took a few seconds to respond, sorry, this is not possible. But know that they are fine, and they are watching you from paradise. The turmoil of emotions in the woman's heart subsides, and she smiled slightly. I see. Will I be able to go to paradise when I die and be with my children? This is also not possible. Your soul is neutral. If you die, you will simply be reincarnated as a new life, the voice answered. An unfathomable sadness flooded the woman's heart. Being with her children again was her greatest wish, but she couldn't be with them anymore. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and made a decision. My kids will be watching me, right? In this case, I choose to go to another world with wishes, as I have nothing left on Earth, and I think it would be fun for them to watch me go to another world. If she can't be with them anymore, at least she will guarantee good times for her children who are watching her from beyond. The voice laughed. Ha ha ha, thinking like a mother until the last moment, huh? As expected? Alright, you can choose any world, be it from movies, anime, cartoons, even from books and unknown parallel worlds, and you have 3 wishes. Do anime, book, and game worlds exist? How is this possible? Sorry, I can't answer that for you. All I can say is that human imagination is much more powerful than you can even imagine. The woman nodded and decided to focus on her choices. Please give me a few moments to think. Of course. She took some time to think about her wishes as she had become an otaku after she entered the geek world because of her children. She knew many worlds and powers that she could wish for, so it wasn't an easy choice. As she thought about her options, she remembered 2 different anime that her kids had been loving while alive, and her eyes lit up. I already know what to wish for. All right, just say it. If you want to think better, that's not a problem either, the voice answered calmly. No, it's okay, I already know what I want. First of all, I want to go to the world of Tensura, she said decisively. Oh, not a bad choice. And your wishes? First of all, I'd like to be reincarnated as Tiamat from the Fate series, with the complete package minus her memories. She chose Tiamat, for the simple fact that she identified a lot with this character. Tiamat, huh? This is a little complicated because as she is a primordial goddess, we would have to insert you in Tensura as a deity as well, and for that, we would have to change the story a little, but nothing too complicated, it's manageable. What are your other 2 wishes? My second wish is to have the Information King Akashic Record skill of Veldanava, and if not possible, a similar skill. As you expected, it is not possible for me to give you this skill, because it is Veldanava's origin skill, but it is possible to give you a similar one. Okay, a similar skill is already great. My third wish is to be able to travel to other universes of anime, books, and so on. This is also quite problematic, but possible. As there can only be one Tiamat in each universe, in every new universe you go to, you will temporarily override Tiamat's existence in that universe. That is all, the woman said. Everything has already been submitted, and I have already received approval. You can leave a message for your kids before you go if you like. It's the best I can do for you. Just tell them I love them more than anything, the woman said with a big smile. All right, I'll tell them. Goodbye, and good luck on your new journey. The moment the voice said that, the woman's vision began to darken, and she lost consciousness. Chapter 2, The World. In the void of infinity, a figure traveled among the stars with its huge and strong wings. This traveling being was Veldanava, the Star Dragon King. Veldanava was a virtually omnipotent existence, he was a god. But none of that mattered, for he was lonely and bored. He had wandered the stars for a long time, alone. It was then, in his loneliness and boredom, that he decided to create a world for fun. Using his ability creation Lord Ahura Mazda, he could easily create worlds, and he did. But in each world, something was missing. Life was lacking. So, to bring the world to life, he created his first companion and friend. He used much of his power to create her, and give her great power that almost rivaled him. He gave her several abilities, including an ability he made especially for her, the Queen of Life, Genesis Origin Skill, an ability comparable to his original ability, but slightly weaker. Veldanava waited for her to open her eyes, and when she did, he felt ecstatic that he would no longer be alone. She opened her eyes slowly, gaining consciousness. She was surprised to see that the first thing she saw when she woke up was a huge dragon with shiny green scales, resembling a galaxy. The second thing she saw was her reflection in Veldanava's eyes. She saw a woman with light blue hair, with a beautiful, curvy, and incomparable body. She also had huge ram-like horns on her head, navy green dragon scales hid her private parts and served as a garment. Her eyes glowed a fuchsia color with a white axe in the middle. This huge dragon is Veldanava, and this is me, she thought, becoming aware of her current situation. She had her memories as a human, and now she has memories of who she is now. Hello, I am Veldanava, the one who created you, and your friend. Let's get along, Veldanava said telepathically in her mind. She smiled upon hearing Veldanava's voice in her head. He didn't look like a god at all, but like a completely bored adult who just wanted company. Poor thing, she thought. Hello, Veldanava. I can't give you my name because I don't have one yet, but I'll be in your care, friend, she responded telepathically. Her voice was soft, calm, and a little mature. It was identical to Tiamat's voice when she talked to Ritsuka in the anime. Veldanava hiked his own head. Oh, of course. How could I forget to give you a name? All right, your name will be Tiamat. When he named her, a curtain of light lightly enveloped her. She didn't feel getting stronger, but rather felt a connection with Veldanava. I accept the name. From today, I will be called Tiamat. After her birth, Tiamat and Veldanava traveled the cosmos for eons, creating worlds and giving them life. The two started as friends but quickly began to see each other as family. Of several created worlds, Veldanava saw one, in which humans, creatures with souls of live will and possessing high intellect, began to sprout. Veldanava liked the creatures' way of life, but these humans gave him joy. However, because humans possess emotion, they would soon end up at war with each other if he or Tiamat left them unattended. Soon after experiencing several other worlds, each with different types of growth based on the small differences he and Tiamat had caused, Veldanava realized that war was inevitable and that it was some kind of evil necessary for his growth. If Veldanava wanted to, he could easily force the suppression of emotions and stop the war, but that would rob humans of their free will. This would become a dystopia where all beings were treated equally but no one had free will, which was not the kind of world he wanted. The world was cruel, but it gave you everything. It was exactly what Veldanava wanted. As he watched the humans, he carefully chose humans with mature souls and created angels and demons as their managers, depending on their alignments. He created a system where souls could circulate through all dimensions. However, he also made sure that the managers couldn't intervene too much and thus named the observer role to 3 specific individuals, Dino from the angel side, Ramirez from the spirit side, and Guy Crimson from the demon side. He also gave the role of general manager to Tiamat as she had a special bond with life itself. During that time, new true dragons were born from the prayers of sentient beings, and each of them represents and embodies aspects of nature. Tiamat was overjoyed at the new addition to the family she one day knew would happen, and of all the new true dragons, unsurprisingly, she loved interacting with Feldera, who seemed like a curious and mischievous child. The time passed, until one day, Veldanava met and fell in love with a human named Lucia. It was then that Veldanava had decided that he would live a human life alongside his wife, simple and fun life as he had always wanted. Neither Tiamat nor the other managers minded that. Tiamat because she knows the story of Tensura, while others just couldn't say anything about it. After some time living together, Lucia became pregnant and gave birth to a little girl who was half human, half true dragon. Veldanova and Lucia named her Milimnava. Her surname came from Veldanova, who when he began his human life, changed his name to Veldanova. Tiamat, as a mother, and also as an ancient otaku, got enamored with Milim, and as her aunt, showered her with love and affection from birth. Unfortunately, not everything was rosy, as, at birth, Milim absorbed almost all of Veldanava's remaining powers. Veldanova, losing most of his powers, as well as not being able to use the skill uselessness anymore as he was no longer in the void, realized that his end was coming. With that in mind, he created some arrangements before his time came. He created a small dragon in his image for his daughter, and gave one of his ultimate abilities, Michael, to his brother-in Lorudra, in order to preserve the balance of the world by also having a human as an observer. A twist that even Veldanova couldn't foresee, however, was that Veldanova didn't die to himself, or from lack of power, but rather, the very system of the world he created, turned against him. According to the world system he created, the creator must love everyone equally, but Veldanova loved his wife and daughter more than anything. With that, he broke the rules of the world and the system. Because of that, the world marked him, and his wife Lucia, for execution. Tiamat, knowing what would happen, wanted to help, as she wanted Milim to grow up with her parents, and also wanted to save her brother, Veldanova. However, both he and Lucia declined with a smile on their faces. Tiamat became furious because she was not able to understand their decision. She could help, but they didn't want help. As that was their wish, so she did not interfere. Shortly thereafter, both Lucia and Veldanova were assassinated by an enemy nation that acted as the world's own proxy. With the death of the two, Milim was alone, with only the company of her little dragon, made by Veldanova. Following the story, Milim would grow up alone with her dragon, without affection or love given by her parents, which caused her childish personality even after she grew up. However, Tiamat would not let that happen. She wouldn't leave her lovely niece alone. On a huge mountain, there were 2 graves on its top, with the company of a beautiful emerald tree. Facing the graves, was Tiamat, in her femme fatale form, and in her arms, she gently carries a pink-haired child and a little green dragon. I don't know what your plans were, my brother, but don't worry, I'll take care of Milim, she thought facing the graves of Veldanova e Lucia. Chapter 3, Fate is a motherfucker. Tiamat took care of Milim for more than a decade, giving her all the love and affection she could give, and educating her. Not only did she take care of Milim, but she constantly visited Guy Crimson, Ramaris, and Dino, for as she was the one who gave them life through the mold made by Veldanova, they were in a way her children. As a goddess, she had a perfect memory, and even after a long time living as Tiamat, she still remembered her human life perfectly. She felt funny seeing characters from an anime she watched as her own children. But unlike Tiamat from the Fate anime, she understood that at some point, she should let go of her children, and let them grow up alone, because that's part of life. Milim was no exception either. As time went on, she stopped visiting those she considered her children, not because she didn't love them anymore, but because her presence was completely unnecessary, and she wasn't the least bit sad or angry at the thought, as it was just natural. When Milim turned 18, she asked Tiamat, whom she saw as her mother, even though she knew who her parents were, permission to leave the house and go explore the world. It would be a lie to say that Tiamat wasn't worried, as Milim still had a very childish and naive personality. But she allowed it anyway, knowing that if she said no, Milim would probably run away. After Milim left home to adventure with Gaia, her pet dragon, Tiamat was left alone for the first time after being reincarnated. She didn't like feeling the feeling of loneliness again that had plagued her every day when she was human. Tiamat looked up at the blue sky, lost in thought. She had nothing else to do. Her children no longer need her, and not even the world needs her. With that, she decided it was time for an indefinite vacation. She liked the thought of having some time to herself. Like Milim, she decided that she wanted to travel and explore the world she created together with Veldanova. There was so much to discover, so many people to meet. After a long time, she didn't see herself as a goddess, but as a human again, a curious human looking to do new things. One thing she didn't expect, however, was that fate really is a big motherfucker. She thought that by taking care of Milim and teaching her, she wouldn't be fooled by humans as she did in the anime, and unfortunately, she was wrong. As she traveled in the guise of a human, she heard the voices of the world in her head. Notice, the individual Guy Crimson has completed the requirements to evolve into a demon lord. The Harvest Festival is starting. Only Tiamat, Guy, and everyone related to Guy heard the voice of the world. She wasn't worried about Guy, as she knew that sooner or later, he would become a demon lord because of his alignment. It was only natural that at some point this would happen. A few minutes later, however, she heard another notification from the world, surprising her. Notice, the individual Milim Nava has completed the requirements to evolve into a demon lord. The Harvest Festival is starting. Somewhere in the west, a devastating battle was raging. A pink-haired girl in purple armor and a single crimson horn on her forehead was fighting wildly against a red-haired man. The pink-haired girl looked completely out of mind, while the red-haired man didn't seem to want to hurt her, but stop her. The girl was of course Milim, who was in a state of madness after a country of humans killed her only friend, and the man was Guy Crimson. The girl attacked him with infinite fury, her attacks ripping apart and exposing the earth below, and the man defended himself with an apprehensive face. Guy Crimson didn't really want to hurt Milim, but he was seriously considering it as he couldn't see any other alternative. In the region where they are fighting, there was once a large forest, but now only the trail of destruction caused by the fight remained. When Guy finally decided to strike back, he heard a very familiar voice in his head, which made him sigh in relief. Worry no more, Rouge. I am here. Milim raised her sword to decapitate Guy, but the next moment, in front of Guy, appears a divine woman with long blue hair and huge ram's horns. Tiamat, seeing the sword coming towards her, just raised one finger, and with the tip of her nail, stopped Milim's attack. The collision of the sword against the nail tip of one of Tiamat's claws created a sonic boom that sent everything around them flying tens of meters. Seeing her attack not working, Milim roars in rage and prepares for another attack. But Tiamat didn't let that happen. She immediately pulled Milim into a hug and trapped her in her arms. She held her gently but firmly, not letting her out of her embrace. Milim struggled to free herself, even biting Tiamat fiercely. As she tried to break free, Tiamat began to sing. Her voice was as calm as a light sea breeze, and it seemed to carry with it everything good in the world. Even Guy had his eyes closed, enjoying the music. Slowly but surely, Milim started to stop trying to break free and started to regain her sanity. After listening to the song for a while, Milim regains her consciousness and immediately starts crying and sobbing into Tiamat's chest, who continues to sing while lightly caressing Milim. Right next to them, Ramirez appeared, who came to help stop the fight, but luckily, it wasn't necessary. Ramirez and Guy were silent as they waited for Tiamat to finish singing, and for Milim to stop crying. Chapter 4, Go to Sleep. Now, after Milim calmed down, the four of them talked to each other calmly, while Milim was still hugging Tiamat, enjoying her breasts like pillows. Oh man, I'm glad Tia arrived, otherwise things were going to get really ugly, Guy commented as he massaged her shoulder. Tiamat glared at him. Rug, I am, mother, call me. Tiamat tried very hard to speak coherently, but she wasn't used to using her throat to speak. She has always talked telepathically, a custom created when traveling with Veldanova. Guy turned his face in irritation, and replied, Look, we've discussed this several times. I will not call you mother. Tiamat was not offended, she simply tilted her head, and said in an amused tone, Rug, Sinsen. Ramirez giggled. Yes, he really does look like it, Sinsen, dear mother. Tiamat smiled brightly when she heard Ramirez calling her mother. She loved having others call her mother, and she always insisted that the people she loved as her children should call her that. Among them all, the only ones who don't call her mom are Guy Crimson and Dino. Guy loved Tiamat, for even as a demon, and even in his original form, which would make any human die of terror, Tiamat always treated him with love and affection. However, Guy is really arrogant. He would never go so far as to call Tiamat his mother, because Tiamat is not truly his mother, but his superior. Dino on the other hand was just too lazy, so lazy that he was irritated by Tiamat's constant motherly clinging. Milim, who was hugging Tiamat comfortably, lifted her face between Tiamat's breasts and asked, Mommy, what is it, Sinsen? Sinsen, hard on the outside, soft on the inside, Tiamat replied. As a once human and otaku, Tiamat naturally spread some of her cult knowledge like expressions and dialects among her loved ones. Milim seemed to get it wrong because she immediately turned to Guy with a mocking smile. After that, it happened as in the original work, with Guy proposing to create a Demon Lord alliance. His reason was that in the future, there would be more Demon Lords and that the alliance would keep them in line. However, Tiamat knows that he is simply drooling over ultimate skills, as an individual develops one when evolving into a true Demon Lord. Seeing the outcome of the day, Tiamat was very happy, as she did something she thought was not possible, change fate. In this battle, Ramirez should have been the one who mediates the battle between Milim and Guy and bring Milim back to sanity, at the price of absorbing so much demonic and dragon energy that she would have to maintain a resurrection cycle indefinitely. However, as it was Tiamat who stopped Milim, this did not happen. Her daughter would not have to undergo death and reincarnation indefinitely, and that made her very happy. As Ramirez had not become a corrupt elemental, only Milim was invited by Guy. Milim agreed, on the condition that there were no restrictions imposed on her and that Tiamat could also participate. Guy didn't see a problem with Milim's conditions, as he doesn't really care what she does as long as she doesn't go overboard, and there was no problem with Tiamat's participation given who she is. However, Tiamat would not participate as a member, but as a guest. Ramirez looked interested but didn't say anything and just left after saying goodbye to Tiamat. Guy informed Milim that he would organize everything about the Demon Lords Alliance, and would call her when there were more Demon Lords, and then he also left. In the desolate and destroyed place, only Tiamat and Milim remained. How are you feeling, sweetheart? Tiamat asked, still worried about Milim. Milim buried her face between Tiamat's breasts again, and murmured, I'm not fine, but I will be. Tiamat sighed. She should have been more attentive to what was going on. She didn't expect Gaia to die even with her interference. Maybe she should have trapped Milim in her house forever. No, that's too extreme, and she's not like that. Painful experiences are also part of one's growth. Sooner or later Milim would have these experiences, and she wouldn't be able to protect her forever. Tiamat cupped Milim's cheeks affectionately and lifted her head to meet her eyes. Milim, I know you have your own life to live, and you can't stay with mom forever. I understand this very well, but it hurts me to see you suffer, more than you imagine. I want you to promise me that if one day you encounter a situation that you cannot handle, you must call me immediately. That's the most I can allow as a mother, Tiamat said, this time telepathically. She knows that almost nothing in the world could harm Milim, but there are things out of that world that both she and Veldanova have had trouble facing and banishing. The multiverse wasn't as dead as she'd imagined at the time. I promise. Tiamat released Milim's cheeks and smiled. That promise was all she needed. She doesn't care if the story goes the same as in the anime, as long as Milim and her other children are safe, she will be at peace. Looking at Milim, who still looked grieving over Gaia's death, Tiamat knew Milim needed some time alone. Not only was Gaia murdered, but he ended up revived as a chaos dragon, and Milim had to slay him. This was the catalyst for Milim's fury. Tiamat affectionately caressed Milim for a little longer, and then left, letting Milim have some alone time, but not before showering her with kisses. Tiamat teleported to her home with her mind full of thoughts. She didn't know what to do for now. She didn't want to interfere in her children's lives, as that would make them find her irritating, but she didn't want to sit still either. The world's system also works perfectly without her, so she had no job to do. Sometimes she hated that Veldanova had made such a perfect system. She could go back to pretending to be human and explore the world, but she didn't like the experience. The food was horrible, as well as the forms of entertainment were terrible for her, who once lived in a modern society in which entertainment was evolving every day. Tiamat could also go to another universo, as she had never used the ability that she gained with her wish, but she doesn't know how the time dilation issue between universes would work, and she didn't want to travel without first meeting Rimuru. She really wants to meet the little, cute slime. Considering her options once more, she decided to sleep, which is something she hasn't done since becoming a deity. She sealed and hid her home from the outside world in a small pocket dimension, and lay down to sleep. She planned to sleep until Rimuru appears and builds Tempest, and then she can have a good time before traveling to another universe. Chapter 5, Tiamat arrives in Tempest. In the great forest of Jura, there was a village of monsters that grew day by day. Still unknown to the world, this village is home to more than one race of monsters, and that village in the future would be the center of the world. The village was called Tempest, and it was led by a powerful blue slime, who goes by the name of Rimuru Tempest. The village was growing day by day, and slowly but surely it was turning into a small city. At the entrance to the village, 2 hobgoblins guarded the gate with spears in hand. The 2 were dressed in leather and fur clothes, and they didn't look too different from each other. Their bodies resembled those of a healthy adult human, the difference being their green skin tone, pointed ears, and relatively large fangs. Both were guards, but they were leaning relaxed against the thick wooden wall of the gate. This month, there were some commotions, including the addition of ogres to the village, so they didn't expect any kind of trouble so soon. As they relaxed, they saw a silhouette in the distance, walking calmly towards them. Is that a person, Gobuta? One of the guards muttered doubtfully. The sun was strong, and it blocked his view on the horizon, but the silhouette of someone could clearly be seen. His companion next to him nodded, also having trouble seeing. Yes, it looks like a person is coming, Gobuta. And from the silhouette, it looks like a human female. Gobuta gripped the spear tightly, and said eagerly, What shall we do, Gobuta? Gobuta sighed at the sight of his fearful colleague. Don't worry, we've had humans visiting before, remember? There is nothing to fear. But what if she is hostile? So we kicked her out, duh. That's why we're here. Oh, that's right, we're guards. Gobuta nodded confidently. As the woman slowly approached, they could get a better look at her, and even though they were hobgoblins, they couldn't help but sigh at the woman's stunning beauty. The woman had long, silky, pale blue hair that shimmered a purplish hue in the sunlight. Her eyes were a unique fuchsia color with an odd white X in the middle of them. She wore a striped navy green one-piece dress with a wide collar at the neck. The dress felt a little tight as it accentuated the size of her bust. A image here for your imagination, Tehi. The woman was, of course, Tiamat, who came out of her hibernation. She was hiding her true appearance, but unfortunately, it was hard not to stand out, as even without her horns, scales, and hiding her magical power, she still gave off a divine aura, and her sacred beauty only accentuated it. The hobgoblins were mesmerized and with a big blush on their faces but regained their composure when the woman came in front of them. May I know who you are, and what do you want here? Gobuta, the more composed of the two, questioned. The woman stood there without answering, and just smiled. Her smile caused another flush of color in both of them. The woman looked amused to see their expressions. After some time without answering, she said, food, entertainment. The woman's voice was soft and sweet, making both their ears tingle. The two looked at her, waiting for her to elaborate, but she remained silent. It's not that she didn't want to answer, but it was a great difficulty for her to speak, as she still hadn't trained her throat to emit words. She wanted to speak telepathically, but she didn't want to scare them, and she was there to have fun. She should keep a low profile. That is until Milim shows up. It would be impossible for her to hide from Milim because as much as she can completely hide her presence from her, she couldn't hide her scent, and Milim was like a dog. Her nose was amazing. Tiamat giggled lightly when comparing Milim to a dog. Milim was very husky-like. She was loud, energetic, and annoying, but also cute, pretty, and affectionate. Thinking about her, she wondered what will happen when Milim meet her after more than 2,000 years. Sorry, could you tell us more specifically the reason for your visit? Normally we would have let you in, as our leader likes humans, but a lot has happened lately, so we're a little on the alert. So without a reason, we can't let you in, Gobuta explained, asking again the reason for the visit. Tiamat frowned. She wanted to come in, but for that, she needed to talk. Sadly, she can't use words very well yet. Maybe she should just use her telepathy? As Tiamat thought about how to solve her problem, help came at just the right time. From inside the gate, another hobgoblin came out. He was much bigger and more muscular than the other two, and had short white hair. What's going on, Gobuta, Tapabuta? Do we have visitors? The two guards looked back startled but sighed in relief when they saw who it was. Aragard-sama? This human woman wants to enter Tempest, but she doesn't want to tell us her intentions. Tapabuta said hastily. His gaze on Rigurd was like a fangirl looking at his idol. A visitor who doesn't want to cooperate. Guess we should Rigurd started to speak with a straight face, but at the sight of Tiamat's image, his jaw dropped, his eyes widened and his face turned red as a tomato. His heart began to beat rapidly, his vision became pink, and he saw hearts around Tiamat, surrounding her like birds. He cupped his chest and started to pant. What is this hot feeling in my chest? Don't tell me, is this love? Tiamat tilted her head and looked at Rigurd puzzled and confused. She obviously knew Rigurd, who was Rimuru's first servant, but why is he panting while holding his chest? Rigurd pushed the two guards aside and quickly got in front of Tiamat. Unexpectedly for everyone, he knelt down and gently took Tiamat's hand. My fair lady, may I have the honor of knowing your name? Tiamat spent a few seconds processing what happened, as she didn't expect this development. She smiled slightly and replied, Tia. I see. Miss Tia, did you come here to visit us? Tiamat nodded. Confirming Tiamat's intention, Rigurd tried to hold back his silly smile, as he thought it was his chance. Little does he know that he will be heartbroken in the future. Rigurd turned his back to Tiamat, and in a flash, he licked his hand and smoothed his hair. You're invited to enter our village, and if I may ask, may I have the honor of escorting you around the place? The two guards behind were amazed at their elder's attitude, for they had never seen him act like that. But Rigurd-sama, we should dash. Before the guard could finish, Rigurd turned to him with a frightening murderous expression that made the guard take a few steps back. Shutting up the guard, he turns back to Tiamat with a bright smile on his face, waiting for her answer. Okay, Tiamat said with a small smile. She was having a lot of fun with this situation. She was right to wait until Rimuru arrived. Now things will get more interesting and fun. Rigurd, looking like a gentleman, bent his arm under his torso, and said, with your permission, madam. Tiamat giggled at Rigurd's staging, and placed her arm over Rigurd's arm, accepting him to escort her. The two entered the village, with Rigurd grinning from ear to ear with a blush, and with Tiamat smiling slightly as she was still having fun at the whole situation. The two guards were left behind with complex emotions. What the hell happened to Rigurd-sama? I have no idea. Chapter 5, Tiamat arrives in Tempest. In the great forest of Jura, there was a village of monsters that grew day by day. Still unknown to the world, this village is home to more than one race of monsters, and that village in the future would be the center of the world. The village was called Tempest, and it was led by a powerful blue slime, who goes by the name of Rimuru Tempest. The village was growing day by day, and slowly but surely it was turning into a small city. At the entrance to the village, two hobgoblins guarded the gate with spears in hand. The two were dressed in leather and fur clothes, and they didn't look too different from each other. Their bodies resembled those of a healthy adult human, the difference being their green skin tone, pointed ears, and relatively large fangs. Both were guards, but they were leaning relaxed against the thick wooden wall of the gate. This month, there were some commotions, including the addition of ogres to the village, so they didn't expect any kind of trouble so soon. As they relaxed, they saw a silhouette in the distance, walking calmly towards them. Is that a person, Gobuta? One of the guards muttered doubtfully. The sun was strong, and it blocked his view on the horizon, but the silhouette of someone could clearly be seen. His companion next to him nodded, also having trouble seeing. Yes, it looks like a person is coming, Tapabuta. And from the silhouette, it looks like a human female. Tapabuta gripped the spear tightly, and said eagerly, What shall we do, Gobuta? Gobuta sighed at the sight of his fearful colleague. Don't worry, we've had humans visiting before, remember? There is nothing to fear. But what if she is hostile? So we kicked her out, duh. That's why we're here. Oh, that's right, we're guards. Tapabuta nodded confidently. As the woman slowly approached, they could get a better look at her, and even though they were hobgoblins, they couldn't help but sigh at the woman's stunning beauty. The woman had long, silky, pale blue hair that shimmered a purplish hue in the sunlight. Her eyes were a unique fuchsia color with an odd white X in the middle of them. She wore a striped navy green one-piece dress with a wide collar at the neck. The dress felt a little tight as it accentuated the size of her bust. An image here for your imagination, Tehi. The woman was, of course, Tiamat, who came out of her hibernation. She was hiding her true appearance, but unfortunately, it was hard not to stand out, as even without her horns, scales, and hiding her magical power, she still gave off a divine aura, and her sacred beauty only accentuated it. The hobgoblins were mesmerized and with a big blush on their faces but regained their composure when the woman came in front of them. May I know who you are, and what do you want here? Gobuta, the more composed of the two, questioned. The woman stood there without answering, and just smiled. Her smile caused another flush of color in both of them. The woman looked amused to see their expressions. After some time without answering, she said, "Food, entertainment." The woman's voice was soft and sweet, making both their ears tingle. The two looked at her, waiting for her to elaborate, but she remained silent. It's not that she didn't want to answer, but it was a great difficulty for her to speak, as she still hadn't trained her throat to emit words. She wanted to speak telepathically, but she didn't want to scare them, and she was there to have fun. She should keep a low profile. That is until Milim shows up. It would be impossible for her to hide from Milim because as much as she can completely hide her presence from her, she couldn't hide her scent, and Milim was like a dog. Her nose was amazing. Tiamat giggled lightly when comparing Milim to a dog. Milim was very husky-like. She was loud, energetic, and annoying, but also cute, pretty, and affectionate. Thinking about her, she wondered what will happen when Milim meet her after more than 2,000 years. "Sorry, could you tell us more specifically the reason for your visit? Normally we would have let you in, as our leader likes humans, but a lot has happened lately, so we're a little on the alert. So without a reason, we can't let you in," Gobuta explained, asking again the reason for the visit. Tiamat frowned. She wanted to come in, but for that, she needed to talk. Sadly, she can't use words very well yet. Maybe she should just use her telepathy? As Tiamat thought about how to solve her problem, help came at just the right time. From inside the gate, another hobgoblin came out. He was much bigger and more muscular than the other two, and had short white hair. What's going on, Gobuta, Tapabuta? Do we have visitors?" The two guards looked back startled but sighed in relief when they saw who it was. "Aragard-sama? This human woman wants to enter Tempest, but she doesn't want to tell us her intentions," Tapabuta said hastily. His gaze on Regard was like a fangirl looking at his idol. "A visitor who doesn't want to cooperate, huh? Guess we should, huh?" Regard started to speak with a straight face, but at the sight of Tiamat's image, his jaw dropped, his eyes widened and his face turned red as a tomato. His heart began to beat rapidly, his vision became pink, and he saw hearts around Tiamat, surrounding her like birds. He cupped his chest and started to pant. What is this hot feeling in my chest? Don't tell me, is this love?" Tiamat tilted her head and looked at Regard puzzled and confused. She obviously knew Regard, who was Rimuru's first servant, but why is he panting while holding his chest? Regard pushed the two guards aside and quickly got in front of Tiamat. Unexpectedly for everyone, he knelt down and gently took Tiamat's hand. "My fair lady, may I have the honor of knowing your name?" Tiamat spent a few seconds processing what happened, as she didn't expect this development. She smiled slightly and replied, "Tia." "I see. Miss Tia, did you come here to visit us?" Tiamat nodded. Confirming Tiamat's intention, Regard tried to hold back his silly smile, as he thought it was his chance. Little does he know that he will be heartbroken in the future. Regard turned his back to Tiamat, and in a flash, he licked his hand and smoothed his hair. "You're invited to enter our village, and if I may ask, may I have the honor of escorting you around the place?" The two guards behind were amazed at their elder's attitude, for they had never seen him act like that. "But Regard-sama, we should dash." Before the guard could finish, Regard turned to him with a frightening murderous expression that made the guard take a few steps back. Shutting up the guard, he turns back to Tiamat with a bright smile on his face, waiting for her answer. "Okay," Tiamat said with a small smile. She was having a lot of fun with this situation. She was right to wait until Rimuru arrived. Now things will get more interesting and fun. Regard, looking like a gentleman, bent his arm under his torso, and said, "With your permission, madam." Tiamat giggled at Regard's staging, and placed her arm over Regard's arm, accepting him to escort her. The two entered the village, with Regard grinning from ear to ear with a blush, and with Tiamat smiling slightly as she was still having fun at the whole situation. The two guards were left behind with complex emotions. What the hell happened to Regard-sama? I have no idea. Chapter 6, The Simps Competition. Inside the biggest house in Tempest Village was Rimuru, resting in his slime form on top of a pillow. As a slime, he didn't really need to rest, but as he was once human, rest was part of his routine. Not to mention he liked to just be idle after a busy day. While resting, however, he always kept some of his skills active, for safety. As he rolled lazily on his pillow, Rimuru felt the presence of someone approaching his room, and he already knew who it was. Entering the room in slow steps, a woman entered. She has long, wavy, pink hair, along with large, bright pink eyes under very pale, almost non-existent eyebrows. She also had a thin, low ponytail that was tied with a single small white ribbon. She has two narrow horns on her head that look like made of porcelain, and she wore a white kimono with simple but graceful red embroidery and a red kimono skirt held in place with a red ribbon. Their clothes, as much as they had no such intention, closely resembles Maiko's attire from Japan's temples. "Excuse me, Rimuru-sama? I hope I'm not bothering you," the girl said gracefully as she bowed slightly in front of Rimuru. "Oh, Shina? Don't worry about it, I was just resting." "Did something happen?" Rimuru replied, sighing inwardly at the sight of Shina bowing. In the early days that he turned the Onis into kaijin, the treatment Rimuru received from them was almost like servants fawning over a god. He had to give in a lot of effort to get them to treat him with less exaggeration. He still feels a little uncomfortable being treated with such respect by the Kaijin and the other monsters who live in Tempest, but he decided it was easier to get used to such treatment than fighting against it, as his village was growing into a city. It wouldn't be strange to receive this kind of treatment in the future, since he is the leader of the village and in the future the leader of the city. Shana shook her head. It's no big deal, Rimuru-sama. It's just that, it looks like we have a human guest. Rimuru raised his non-existent brow. A human guest? It's been a while since we've had humans or any other new monsters in Tempest. Now that I think about it, it's been a while since that trio came to Tempest. But I think it's better this way, given the complications we've been through these past few months. Rimuru thought, remembering the trio of kind-hearted adventurers he met, as well as a certain black-haired Japanese girl. Don't worry too much, we've had humans visiting us before, and if she got through the gate legally, then there shouldn't be any problems. If you think the visit is suspicious, just tell Rigur to keep an eye on her, Rimuru said. A/N, do not confuse Rigurd with Rigur. Rigur is Rigurd's son, and he is the head of security, while Rigurd is the elder. Rimuru understood that Shana was a little worried, as the sight of a nation of monsters is frightening to most humans, and the Kaijin were not yet part of the village when humans first visited them, so it was normal for her to be wary of them. Shana looked embarrassed, and said hesitantly, yes, I understand that, Rimuru-sama. It's just that, how can I say this? A blue question mark formed above Rimuru's head as he looked at Shana, who seemed to struggle to speak. Shana, is there any problem? That. It's not exactly a problem, but you'd better see it for yourself, Rimuru-sama. Rimuru sighed and replied, well, if you say so. I'm not busy at the moment anyway. Still not understanding what the problem could be, Rimuru jumps in his slime form, and in midair, he transforms into his human form. In his human form, he has golden eyes and silvery blue hair, he is dressed in baggy leather pants, leather shoes, and a white blouse. Over his blouse, he wears a blue vest. Rimuru came out of his house in his human form with Shana close behind, and asked, so what exactly is the problem? Rigurd-san and Gobuta-san seem to be having a heated argument, Shana replied. Rimuru raised his eyebrow, finding the situation a bit unusual. Where are they? They are right there in front, you can already hear the noise. Oh, at a location near the gate, a lot of goblins and hobgoblins were standing there. They seemed to be excited and cheering, with some screaming Rigurd and others Gobuta. Seeing that, Rimuru let out a long sigh as he already knew the situation would be a pain in the ass. Alright, let's settle this. I hope the visitor is not frightened or uncomfortable with this situation. I'd hate to have visitors think we're barbarians or something. By the way, where is she? Rimuru looked around, looking for the human visitor, but it didn't look like she was outside. He shrugged, thinking she was probably in some tent doing sightseeing and went back to check on the crowd that had formed in front of the gate. Behind him, Shana gave a worried smile, and thought, what will his expression be when he finds out that the argument happened over the human woman? Getting close to the crowd, they began to sense Rimuru's presence, and they made a path for him to pass. However, the crowd continued to cheer, shouting bets, boos, and words of encouragement. When Rimuru arrived at the center, he saw Rigurd and Gobuta side by side, both shirtless. They were doing several different poses to show off their muscles. It was a funny scene to see Gobuta trying to show off his muscles, as he was very thin and small, while Rigurd was huge and bear-like. The strange thing, however, is that right behind Rigurd and Gobuta, and on the other side of where he was standing, was a beautiful human woman sitting gracefully in a chair. She was clapping her hands and swaying slightly her body while humming with a smile on her face. She looked like she was having a great time. Upon seeing this scene, Rimuru's eye twitched and he muttered, what's going on here? I can explain, Rimuru-sama, said a voice right next to him. Rimuru turned and saw Rigurd's son and head of security, standing beside him with his arms crossed. All right. Please tell me why these two idiots seem to be having a bodybuilding contest, Rimuru said, already feeling exhausted. Rigur nodded, and said, it all started with my father escorting the human woman. He was behaving a little strangely, but that's beside the point. After a while of touring, with my father showing her around the village as well as introducing her to the villagers, Gobuta suddenly appeared and started arguing with my father. Why would Gobuta do that? He's a coward, Rimuru said, not afraid of hurting Gobuta's feelings. Rigur looked troubled but answered anyway. Well, using Gobuta's own words, it's a fight for love. A fight for love, Rimuru said intrigued. Yup. It seems that both my father and Gobuta fell in love with the human woman at first sight, and because of that, they began to argue about who would accompany her through the village. As they argued, the human woman proposed a competition, and they accepted. Now my father and Gobuta have to face each other in different challenges to show their strong points without involving violence, and the winner will have the prize of escorting her through the rest of the village. Rigur explained with an amused tone. He was clearly enjoying the unexpected event. Confirming the reason for all this mess, Rimuru lowered his head with a tired sigh and massaged his forehead with his hands. He just wanted to rest. Why do strange situations keep happening one after another? Feeling a gaze on him, Rimuru lifts his head and sees the human woman staring at him. When their eyes meet, the woman flashes a beaming smile and starts waving at him excitedly. Rimuru waved back with a strange smile. As he waved back, however, his gaze was instinctively drawn to the woman's bust, and he finally understood why the two idiots were fighting for her. T-Theory big? No, calling them big would be an understatement. It's even bigger than shins. Rimuru thought with a blush on his face. Rimuru was not a pervert, on the contrary, he is a gentleman, even more so now that he is a slime and doesn't feel any sexual attraction anymore. However, it was impossible for him to ignore the woman's huge baton curse that swayed erotically as she waved at him. Rimuru took a deep breath to compose himself and got a better look at the woman. Looking more carefully, the human woman, in addition to having great assets, was divinely beautiful. So beautiful he couldn't help but suspect. This person. Is she really human? Chapter 7, and the winner is... In the center of the crowd, Gobuta and Rurgerd continued their competition without noticing Rimuru, who just watched from the side. Aura? Look at my muscles, Miss Tia. Impressive? No. Gobuta said with a confident smile as he made a pose, trying to show off his non-existent muscles. Rurgerd snorted at Gobuta and said, "Mph, insolent brat? Even a wooden stick has more muscles than you? Pay attention to how it's done." Aura. Rurgerd did a side chest, and his muscles exploded with vigor. Rurgerd looked at Gobuta with a sneer, and Gobuta clicked his tongue in annoyance. The two were trying to show off to Tiamat, but unfortunately for them, all of her attention is on Rimuru, who was looking at her with a bit of suspicion. He is so cute and small. He reminds me of Milim in some ways. Alright, I've already decided, I'm going to adopt him, one way or another. Tiamat thought with a passionate smile and bright eyes. She could barely keep her inner otaku and motherly instinct in check at that moment. If it weren't for her self-control, she would have already jumped on Rimuru to pet him. Don't be fooled by Tiamat's primordial goddess status. She may have the looks and powers of Tiamat from the Fate series as well as having lived for eons alongside Veldanova, but deep down, she was just a super caring and loving mother who wants cute children so that she can bathe them in her love. That's right, she was a famlycon to the core. Rimuru felt Tiamat's intense gaze and shivered. He didn't know why, but his instincts told him she was dangerous, but in a different way. Great sage, can you tell me if there is anything strange about this woman? Rimuru thought, suspicious of Tiamat. Analyzing. Analyze completed. The individual possesses the parameters of an average human. Rimuru raised an eyebrow upon hearing the result of the analysis. Are you sure about that, great sage? I mean, her eyes are kind of weird, and she's suspiciously pretty. Rimuru waited for another answer, but great sage did not reply and remained silent. Don't tell me, are you upset because I'm doubting you? Great sage didn't respond again, and Rimuru sighed, thinking that great sage was too dramatic for a skill. On the other side, Tiamat smiled as she felt the great sage skill analyzing her. No type of analysis or skill could take effect on her as long as she doesn't want to, as her origin skill, Queen of Life Genesis, allowed her to have full control over any existing skill. It might not be as broken as Feldinava's origin skill, which allowed him to create any skill he wanted, but it was just as powerful. Queen of Life Genesis can nullify, increase potency, control, and even evolve skills. Wanting to go back to his room to continue his rest, Rimuru decides to put an end to this pointless competition. He walks to the middle, where Gobuta, Rurgerd, and Tiamat were, and claps his hands, getting everyone's attention. Gobuta and Rurgerd finally noticed Rimuru, and they gasped in shock. Rimuru-sama. Rurgerd exclaimed babbling as he broke out in cold sweat. Gobuta, on the other hand, started whistling with his hands relaxed on the back of his head, ignoring Rimuru's accusing gaze. Alright everyone, let's put an end to this competition, okay? We still have a lot of work to do, said Rimuru, using a skill to amplify his voice for everyone to hear. Gobuta turned to Rimuru with disbelieving eyes, as if Rimuru had betrayed him. Wait, what? We can't end the competition until we have a winner. Rimuru placed his hands on his hips and sighed, already used to Gobuta's personality. Listen, Gobuta, we have a lot of projects to do. We can have festivities on another date. Gobuta fell to the ground on his knees with desperate eyes, and replied, You don't understand, Rimuru-sama? This is a competition with my love at stake. Rimuru started massaging his forehead, wondering what he should do with Gobuta. Maybe a light spanking will do, right? Ahem. Rimuru heard a cough on the side and looked at Rurgerd, who had a slight blush on his face. I also ask that you allow us to continue, Rimuru-sama. The crowd also began to ask Rimuru to let them continue as they wanted to see the result of the competition. Losing patience, a vein popped on Rimuru's forehead, and he yelled, Arg? Mao? Alright then. All we need is a winner, right? Gobuta, Rurgerd, and the crowd around them nodded. Rimuru looked at Tiamat, and asked, Ahem. I'm sorry for the confusion caused by my subordinates, but could you please, say which one of them won? Rimuru was feeling very embarrassed about having shown this kind of scene in front of a visit, and he was already thinking about how to compensate her for it. He didn't want her to spread the word that they are a bunch of barbaric monsters, as it would give his village a bad image. In response, Tiamat nodded and placed her finger on her cheek, looking thoughtful. A few seconds later, her expression lit up with a smile as if she had made up her mind. She gets up and slowly walks toward Gobuta and Rurgerd, who have started to get extremely anxious. She will choose me, right? After all, I'm super handsome. Gobuta thought, his hands trembling with anticipation. No way she's going to choose this skinny brat. Come to me, my sweet honey flower. Rurgerd thought with a confident smile. However, betraying everyone's expectations, Tiamat passes between the two, and continues walking, leaving Gobuta, Rurgerd, and the crowd confused. Tiamat stops in front of Rimuru, takes his hand, and raises it, announcing him as the winner. Rimuru exclaimed, not expecting that outcome. What? Why is Rimuru-sama the winner? He wasn't even in the competition. Gobuta yelled in outrage. Rigurd stood still like a statue with a shocked expression, his heart was completely shattered. Tiamat replied to Gobuta without hesitation, very cute child. Gobuta falls to the ground on his knees with dead eyes, and thought, is she insinuating that I'm ugly? Rimuru scratched the back of his head and sighed, thinking about what he should do. Well, I guess I'd better accompany her than those two idiots. They would probably try to flirt with her all the time, and that would definitely make her uncomfortable, he thought, coming to a decision. Rimuru cleared his throat and looked at Tiamat with a sympathetic smile. I apologize again for the inappropriate behavior of my subordinates. My name is Rimuru Tempest. I am the leader of the Tempest village, and I will escort you around our village. Tiamat smiled, feeling happy, and introduced herself. Call me, Tia. Tia, huh? It's a cute name. Nice to meet you, Tia-san. Rimuru replied with a bright smile. Tiamat blushed slightly and clutched her chest. That smile was like an arrow going through Tiamat's heart, and she had to control herself from crushing Rimuru in a hug. Well, let's go then. I'm sure you will like our village, Rimuru said confidently as he started to walk. Unexpectedly Tiamat held his hand from behind. Rimuru turned around with a confused expression, but Tiamat just smiled. Rimuru shrugged, not caring much for the gesture, and continued walking while holding hands with her. Looking from a distance, anyone would mistake Tiamat and Rimuru for a mother and child as their hair color are pretty similar. In the distance, Shun watched everything with jealous tears in her eyes as she nibbled on a handkerchief. Who is this bitch? How dare she hold Rimuru-sama's hands? Does she think that just because her boobs are bigger than mine she can be that bold? Beside her, Shana patted her back to calm her down. This is going to be troublesome, Shana thought with a sigh. Chapter 8, Teasing Jealous Children. That's where we make our clothes. Oh, right, there is where our blacksmith shop is. Our blacksmiths are true dwarves? Awesome, right? Hehe. Rimuru commented excitedly. Tiamat followed Rimuru with a huge smile on her face while holding his hand. She was loving seeing the expressions Rimuru was making while showing her his village. He looked like an excited child showing his mother how hard he had worked. Tiamat had to admit, however, that Rimuru did a great job. Tempest was still a village because it was still very small compared to a city, but it wasn't far behind. The streets are well paved with earth and stone, and the few houses and facilities were very well built. By her estimates, Tempest would become a city in the blink of an eye, if not for the Orc Lord who has already appeared. One positive point about that, however, is that after the Orcs join Tempest, the city's development will skyrocket. Now how can I make little Rimuru accept me as a mother, I wonder? He may be a 1-year-old slime, but inside he's still a man over 30. It won't be easy, but obstacles like these are nothing compared to a mother's love. Tiamat thought with a raised fist and a determined expression. At that moment, Rimuru looked at her in confusion, wondering what she was thinking about. As Rimuru continued to escort Tiamat, two people stopped in front of Rimuru and Tiamat, and when Rimuru saw who it was, he swallowed hard. In front of them were Shana and Shun. Shun had her arms crossed and a fake smile on her face, trying to hold back her fury. Shana was close behind, also hiding dark feelings behind a polite smile. Shana wasn't caring much about Tiamat a while ago, but when she noticed how Tiamat looked at Rimuru, she felt irritated. Shun stared at Rimuru holding hands with Tiamat with a death glare. Rimuru, feeling Shun's glare, quickly let go of Tiamat's hand, and Tiamat pouted. Ha ha ha, Shun, what are you doing here? I thought you were helping in the kitchen. Rimuru stuttered. He doesn't know why she was so angry, but she looked scary. Shun's death glare disappeared and turned into a happy smile. Rimuru-sama? I ended up being kicked out of the kitchen and came looking for you. After all, I'm your secretary. And coincidentally, while looking for you, I saw you here, with this woman. Oh my, yes? What a coincidence, Fufu. Shana, who was behind Shun, said with a giggle. Coincidence my ass? And Shana was clearly with me not so long ago? What's with these two? Rimuru thought scared, but on the outside, he kept a calm smile. Well yeah, I was just showing our human visitor the village. Rimuru said, and introduced Tiamat. Shana, this is Tia-san, our first human visitor in a while. Tia-san, this is Shun and Shana, my secretary and our tailor, respectively. Tiamat nodded politely with a smile, while Shun and Shana just glared at her with fake smiles. A heavy atmosphere quickly formed between the three of them, and Rimuru shivered. What's with this tense atmosphere? Looks like a war is going to burst any moment here. I need to do something. Something clicked in Rimuru's mind, and he immediately put his plan into action. Shana, you still have textile work to do, right? I was wondering if you could make new clothes for me. The tense atmosphere around Shana immediately disappeared and she smiled happily. As you wish, Rimuru-sama. Fufu, you're counting on me, right? Rimuru nodded quickly. Exactly, I'm counting on you. Shana bowed and left in a good mood. Rimuru wiped his sweat from his forehead and sighed in relief. Yosh, now all that's left is Shun, he thought, but before Rimuru could say anything, Shun said something that surprised Rimuru. Rimuru-sama, please, you have a lot of work to do to be acting as a guide. You can let me, your secretary, take care of it. Shin said, puffing out her chest proudly. Do you want to guide Tia-san in my stead? Rimuru said surprised. Seeing how her mood was, he thought Shin was gonna make a scandal. He hadn't expected her to offer to trade places with him. Maybe he got it wrong? But of course, what kind of bastard would make someone as wonderful and busy as Rimuru-sama be a simple guide? Such a person must be very simple-minded, Fufu, Shin said with a polite smile, but nothing in her speech was polite. Rimuru broke into a sweat and looked at Tiamat. He expected to see Tiamat irritated by Shin's comment, but Tiamat kept a smile on her face. Rimuru sighed in relief seeing that Tiamat didn't look offended, and then became angry about Shin's behavior towards Tiamat. Phew, good thing Tia-san doesn't look offended. Still, Shin, to offend a guest like this, what got into you? He thought. While thinking of a way to punish Shin and compensate Tiamat, Tiamat did something that neither Rimuru, let alone Shin, expected. Tiamat took Rimuru's arm, pulled him over herself, and hugged him gently from behind. Rimuru felt Tiamat's warmth on his back as well as two big, soft, and heavy things pressing against his head, then he processed what had happened. Tia-san? What are you doing? Rimuru said confused while blushing. He didn't expect to be hugged so suddenly. Seeing what Tiamat did, something seemed to break in Shin. A huge vein burst on her forehead and her murderous aura began to leak non-stop. What does this bitch think she's doing? Embracing Rimuru-sama while forcing that useless mass of fat over his head? Only I am allowed to do that? I will rip you apart, Shin thought furiously. The situation was getting out of control, but Tiamat had a satisfied smile on her face. That was Tiamat's revenge for Rimuru letting go of her hand. That has nothing to do with her wanting to hug him and wanting to tease them both to see their reactions? Not at all. Rim-chan, my guide, not you. Go away, nuisance, Tiamat said with a smug smirk as she pressed Rimuru even more against herself. Rim-chan, exclaimed Rimuru upon hearing the nickname Tiamat gave him. And nuisance you say? Another vein popped in Shin's head. Her expression darkened, and a wild smile appeared on her face as her magic power exploded around her. Kukikiku, you've crossed the line, you dairy cow? Oh no, this is getting dangerous. Rimuru thought, prepared to stop Shin in case she attacks Tiamat. When the situation was about to become more dangerous, however, help came for Rimuru in the form of a red-haired kaijin. Oh ho, Rimuru-sama? I finally found you? I have something important to report. Seeing his salvation, Rimuru got off Tiamat's embrace and ran away towards the red-haired kaijin. Tiamat clicks her tongue, annoyed that her fun is over. Benimaru? Great timing? What's the problem? Rigur asked me to tell you that a messenger from the Lizardman has appeared at the front gate and that he wants to speak with our leader. Normally it was Rigurd-san who was supposed to let you know, but he's in the infirmary with a strange pain in his chest. I think he's sick or something. Benimaru said. Then he looked behind Rimuru and noticed Shin and another woman he didn't know. The two women looked irritated. Shin was looking at the light blue-haired woman as if she wanted to kill her, and the light blue-haired woman had a disgruntled pout as she was looking at Rimuru. Benimaru immediately thought nonsense about them disputing Rimuru, which was not completely wrong. They just had different motivations. Benimaru looked at Rimuru and gave him a teasing, mocking smile. Oh ho ho, did I interrupt something? And not really? Haha, we were just having a friendly chat. Come on, let's see what the Lizardmen want. Shin, please take Tia-san to the canteen to get something to eat, she must be hungry. Also, be polite, okay? Rimuru said as he pushed a confused Benimaru away with him. Rimuru quickly left with Benimaru, leaving Tiamat and Shin alone. TCH? As you wish, Rimuru-sama, Shin responded with irritation. She looked at Tiamat, and Tiamat smiled sympathetically at her. Shin got angrier when she saw Tiamat's smile. It was as if she was making fun of her. Rimuru-sama has given me the task of taking you to the canteen, so let's go, Shin said with clear disgust. Then she turned around and started walking. Tiamat giggled, finding Shin's expressions and jealous behavior endearing. Irera? Such a cute child. I think I'll adopt her too. Tiamat thought happily as she followed Shin from behind. Chapter 9, Discord/Notice Chapter 10, The Lizardman. Tiamat and Shin were walking towards the canteen, and Shin didn't stop talking, or rather, warning Tiamat. As you are a visitor, you must follow our rules, and as Rimuru-sama's secretary, I will quote them for you, as you don't seem to know. Rule number 1, don't approach Rimuru-sama. Rule number 2, don't talk to Rimuru-sama. Rule number 3, don't look at Rimuru-sama. Rule number 4, don't breathe the same air as Rimuru-sama. Rule number. Shin continued saying the rules, which were obviously rules invented by Shin at that moment to keep Tiamat away from Rimuru, and Tiamat quickly got bored. It was then that Tiamat's eyes twinkled, and she immediately had an interesting idea. She heard from Benimaru that the Lizardman had arrived, but she was not interested before. Now it's different. It was the perfect time to tease Shin, get closer to Rimuru, and have some fun. Tiamat stopped, turned around, and with a playful smile she started walking opposite to where she and Shin were going. Shin, who was too absorbed in quoting her rules, didn't notice that Tiamat was getting away. And last but not least, rule number 25, don't think about Rimuru-sama. Now, do you have any questions? Shin said, but she heard no response. In fact, the woman named Tia was very quiet for some time now. I said, do you? Shin turned around, but there was no one behind her. The woman named Tia simply disappeared. Where is she? Outside the village, Rimuru, along with Benimaru, Hakura, and Rigurd, that had gotten better from his broken heart, were in front of a military unit of Lizardmen. Rimuru was in his slime form and was being held by Benimaru. Which one's the envoy? Rimuru asked while looking for the envoy among the other Lizardmen. In the next moment, the Lizardmen began slamming their spears into the ground in sync, and as they did so, they made way for another Lizardman who rode a short dinosaur-like beast. That's a rather dramatic entry, Rimuru thought. The Lizardman mounted on the beast raised a hand in a clenched fist, and the other Lizardmen stopped slamming their spears on the ground. He then jumps off his mount, and lands just in front of Rimuru and company. I am Gabiru of the Lizardmen. You all will serve under me? Consider this a great honor, the Lizardman named Gabiru said while striking an exaggerated pose. The other Lizardmen kneeled in admiration around him as they clapped. Yeah, Gabiru-sama. You're the best. Kaie, so cool. Rimuru and company, seeing that scene, could only mutter, huh. One of the Lizardmen who was beside Gabiru turned to them. Remember this face well? This is the man who will be the next chieftain of the Lizardmen? Bow down. Huh. Rimuru and company muttered again in disbelief. You will serve under me? Consider it an honor? Big shot? Who does he think he is? Rimuru thought annoyed. He had never seen such a shameless person after reincarnating. Ahem. Forgive me, you called yourself Gabiru, yes? This request to serve you is rather sudden, Rigurd said, drawing Gabiru's attention to himself. Gabiru looked at Rigurd and shook his head looking disappointed. Good grief. Must I spell it out for you? You've heard the news, have you not? What news? The news that those orc pigs are invading the great forest of Jura. Hearing that, Rimuru and company became apprehensive. Gabiru continued, which is why it would best suit you to become my man. I, Gabiru, will protect you weaklings from the threat of the orcs, he ended dramatically with another exaggerated pose. However, after saying that, he finally got a better look at the people in front of him, and realized that they didn't look like goblins. In a quick tactical retreat, he crouches along with his companions. I don't see any goblins, he said confused. What? This was supposed to be a goblin village though. In fact, I don't see anyone looking weak around here. While Gabiru was talking to his subordinates, Rimuru was thinking about the Orc Lord invasion. Well, if orcs are invading, I guess forming a united front with the Lizardmen is one option. As he considered what he could do, he heard angry shouts coming from the village. The sound of the voice was getting closer to them, and it was a voice he knew. That was Shin? What is she doing? Not only Rimuru, but everyone else heard Shin's screams, and turned towards the village entrance. There, they saw Shin running after Tiamat, who was running toward them. Shin looked furious as she yelled for Tiamat to stop, and Tiamat had a tearful expression as she ran like a damsel in distress. What are they doing here? Rimuru exclaimed. You, stop running right now and come back here. Shin yelled furiously at Tiamat. Tiamat ignored Shin and continued running towards Rimuru with tears in her eyes. If the context is ignored, this scene could clearly be interpreted as a frightening monster trying to capture a scared maiden. Benimaru was trying to hold back his laughter, Hakura raised his eyebrows in puzzlement, and Rigurd had a blushed face with a silly smile as he saw Tiamat. Gabiru was also confused by the sudden appearance of the two women, and his eyes immediately widened at the sight of them, specifically at the sight of their huge breasts bouncing as they ran. Wow, Gabiru thought. Tiamat caught up with the group and quickly took Rimuru from Benimaru, and hugged him while pretending to cry. Rim-chan, help! Shin, bullying me. I wish I was you right now, Rimuru-sama. Q. I'm so envious. Rigurd thought momentarily as he saw Rimuru being crushed between Tiamat's breasts. Tia-san, stop, you're gonna make this slime way too slim. Rimuru exclaimed, and Tiamat loosened her hug. Shin finally catches up to them and seeing Tiamat hugging Rimuru again, her expression grew even more frightening. Tiamat turned to her, still with Rimuru on her lap, and showed her tongue mockingly at Shin. Why you? Shin gritted her teeth and Rimuru could have sworn he saw a scary Oni taking form on her back. Wait, Tia-san? That was rather cute, but why are you provoking her? Rimuru thought in panic. Kukikiko. Hearing a strange laugh, everyone turned to Gabiru. Everyone looked at him in confusion, until he said dramatically, rejoice, human woman and horned woman, I, Gabiru, will be taking you both as my wives. Be honored. The Lizardmen around him started praising him right away. As expected of Gabiru-sama. So manly. These women are very lucky. Oh, how I wish I were a woman right now. Rimuru looked at Gabiru dumbfounded at his statement. Was this Lizardman in his right mind? Suddenly, Rimuru felt two scary auras coming from behind, so much so that he started to sweat, and he is a slime. Not only Shin but also Tiamat was looking at Gabiru as if looking at a disgusting insect. Rimuru-sama, can I kill him? Shin said as she snapped her fingers menacingly. This child is not cute, Tiamat murmured, her eyes completely emotionless. Tiamat knew Gabiru was an idiot, but not that much. As a goddess who has lived for a long time, she is naturally somewhat arrogant, and hearing a lowly lizard say that she should feel honored to be accepted as his wife made her angry. Rimuru, who was being held by Tiamat, sighed wearily, wondering what he had done to deserve this. Chapter 11, Go away, lizards. Bonus chapter. Hearing his subordinates' praise and flattery after making his proposal to Tiamat and Shin, Gaeburo was feeling very confident. After all, he was the great Gaeburo. What woman wouldn't want to be his mistress? Gaeburo was so focused on being the center of attention that he didn't even notice the death glares centered on him. So, what's your answer? I can assure you that becoming my wife is much better than living in this rundown village, Gaeburo said with confidence. When Gaeburo mentioned Tempest, defaming the village, not only Shin and Tiamat but everyone else felt really angry. Gaeburo didn't seem to notice that everyone in Rimuru's group was looking at him with hostility as he still had a smug smile on his face. Fortunately, his subordinates weren't as stupid as he was. Feeling clear hostility directed towards them, one of the lizardmen approached Gaeburo's ear and whispered, "Iahem, Gaeburo-sama, about the dire wolves." "Oh, right. Thanks for reminding me." Gaeburo praised his subordinate, then he turned back to Rimuru's group again and said, "Let's save the wedding talk for later, I have more important matters to discuss." "Ahem, I've heard that some among you managed to tame dire wolves. I will make those of you who have tamed the dire wolves as officials in my army. Bring them to me," he demanded. Tiamat decided to ignore the conversation as she was feeling irritated, so she started to focus on the feeling of Rimuru's slime body. Fufu, what a squishy and cold body, it would make a great pillow on hot summer days. Oh, it's not a bad idea to create slime pillows. I think I'll make one for each of my children as a gift. I'm sure they will like it. Tiamat thought, happy with the idea she had. On Tiamat's lap, Rimuru shivered. What was this feeling of danger I just felt? From that point onwards, the conversation continued more or less like in the anime with Rimuru summoning Ranga to talk to Gaeburo, the difference being that everyone was really angry with Gaeburo for talking badly about Tempest. Even Rimuru seemed upset about what Gaeburo said, but he remained polite as they talked. They continued talking until Gaeburo insulted and challenged Rimuru to a duel in front of Ranga, which resulted in Ranga almost killing Gaeburo in that instant. It was then that Gobuta appeared while bouncing around and humming. "Hey, what are guys doing?" Gobuta asked curiously, then he saw Tiamat holding Rimuru. "Miss Tia, you're here too? What a coincidence?" "Hehe," he said with a big blush. Rimuru and company turned to Gobuta, surprised at his arrival. Tiamat smiled as she saw Gobuta getting all embarrassed like a timid high school teenager girl. Her mood improved with that. Phew, what a silly child, Tiamat thought with a giggle. "Gobuta, what are you doing here?" Rimuru asked. "Oh, I was just passing by when I heard you guys talking, so I decided to check it out," Gobuta replied. A big shadow passed over them all, and Ranga landed behind Gobuta. Ranga grabbed him by the jacket with his mouth, and said, "Good timing." "Huh." Gobuta muttered confused, and in the next instant, he was facing Gaeburo with a spear in his hands. "What the heck is going on?" Ranga, who was right next to Gobuta, looked at Gaeburo and said, "Lizard, if you can defeat this one, I will consider your offer to join your army." Gaeburo, who was ready for the duel, said contemptuously, "Mph, fine by me. Having one of your subordinates fight in your instead saves you the shame of losing. Wouldn't you agree, slime?" Unfortunately for Gaeburo, his tactic of trying to make the slime angry didn't work out as Rimuru wasn't paying attention to him. "Tia-san, stop it, this somehow tickles." Rimuru was too busy trying to get Tiamat to stop rubbing her face on his slime body. "Wow, it's really refreshing. Why haven't I tried this before?" Tiamat thought. Seeing that he was being ignored, Gaeburo's eye twitched in irritation. He, the great Gaeburo, was being completely ignored by a mere slime. He never felt so humiliated. Feeling Gaeburo's gaze on her and Rimuru, Tiamat was annoyed again. Just feeling the despicable gaze of that lowly lizard made her irritated. She then looked at Gobuta, who was shaking in fear in front of Gaeburo and had an idea. In the original work, Rimuru encourages Gobuta to fight, with the penalty of eating Shin's food if he loses. But as far as she knows, Gobuta didn't eat Shin's food yet because of the competition he had with Rigurd, so Gobuta doesn't know how bad Shin's food is. That was Tiamat's fault. There was nothing that could motivate Gobuta to fight because of her interference. That said, as it is her fault, it's just fair that she gives Gobuta some motivation, right? Tiamat handed Rimuru to Shin, who was beside her, and walked towards Gobuta. Rimuru, Shin, Hakura, Rigurd, and even Ranga were completely perplexed by the light blue-haired woman's unexpected actions. They had no idea what she intended to do. Gobuta noticed Tiamat approached him and immediately started stuttering nervously with a blush, completely forgetting about the duel that was about to take place. Tiamat got beside Gobuta, looked at him with a smile, patted his head, and said affectionately, "Do your best, okay?" Doing what she wanted to do, Tiamat returned to Shin's side. Everyone looked at her, completely intrigued. What the hell was that? They all thought. While everyone was confused, however, Tiamat's words continually repeated in Gobuta's mind, and in the blink of an eye, a huge aura of super a huge aura of determination exploded out of his body. Leave it to me, Tia-san. I'll kick that lizard's ass for you." Gobuta yelled. His youth was burning more than ever. It was his chance to show how manly he was to Tiamat. Tiamat smiled brightly as she saw Gobuta completely determined to win. All according to the plan? Rimuru looked at Tiamat with some respect and fear. With just one sentence she made the cowardly Gobuta completely determined to fight. Women are scary. After that, the fight quickly unfolded, with Gobuta defeating Gaeburo with just one blow. All the Lizardmen present were paralyzed in shock at the loss of their leader with just one blow, and Rimuru and company congratulate Gobuta on his victory. As a reward for winning so overwhelmingly, Tiamat patted Gobuta on the head once more as she congratulated him. Gobuta was happy and smiled silly, thinking that this was the best reward he could receive. Of course, Rimuru also offered him a weapon made by Kurobe as a reward, which Gobuta readily accepted. Rimuru turned to the Lizardman still frozen in shock, and announced, "As you can see, Gobuta won this battle. If you want us to help you fight the orcs, we will consider it, but we won't serve you. Take your leader and leave for today." The Lizardmen came out of their stupor and they quickly picked up Gabiru, who was passed out on the ground, and left, with the promise that they would return for revenge. Seeing the Lizardmen flee, Rimuru and company sighed. However, Tiamat had a satisfied smile on her face. She found it very refreshing to see Gabiru's face smashed on the ground. "Well, I guess we'll have to plan where we go from here," Rimuru said. Chapter 12, Promises and Dryad. Chapter 12, Promises and Dryad. Chapter 13, Let's go to another world. It was been a week since the meeting about the Orc Lord, and Tiamat did as much as she could to help while pretending to be human. At first many suspected and doubted her as it was very strange and suspicious for a human woman to want to stay in a humble village of monsters. Mainly because Tiamat has incomparable beauty and her clothes seemed of noble origin. What kind of noble woman would rather stay in a village of monsters than in a luxurious mansion where she can have whatever she wants? It was very suspicious. However, the determination, passion, and sincerity that Tiamat has shown while helping over the past few days have made the residents see her in a completely different light. As the war was approaching and it was inevitable, everyone was helping with what they could. Tiamat did a lot, and her specialties were cooking and taking care of children. Tiamat took care of the goblin children and wolf cubs for a short time, and the children fell in love with Tiamat. Just the sight of the children surrounding Tiamat with smiles as they played brought a warm feeling into the chests of anyone who saw them. Of course, she not only took care of the children while their parents were busy, but she also helped out in the kitchen. During her back and forth in the kitchen, Tiamat had met Shin a few times. The first time the two met in the kitchen, Shin apologized again for her attitude, and Tiamat comforted her saying that everything was fine. From then on, their relationship improved considerably. Shin would go to the kitchen to practice her cooking, with the excuse that she just wanted to learn, but Tiamat and everyone else knew that wasn't true. Shin has a rather brutal and violent personality, but deep down she had a shy desire to be a good wife someday and wanted to make Rimuru a delicious meal. Tiamat found such an attitude extremely cute, and it was even cuter when Tiamat confronted her with the truth. Seeing Shin all red as she babbled desperately trying to deny the truth was adorable. Tiamat had offered her assistance in teaching her the art of cooking, but Shin declined to say she wanted to learn everything herself. Tiamat, however, wouldn't take no for an answer, and started a lecture about how her attitude was wrong, and that she should learn from someone, or from a book instead of trying to figure it out on her own. The lecture lasted for hours, and unable to take it any longer, Shin gave up her childish stubbornness and accepted Tiamat's help. From that day forward, Tiamat had become Shin's teacher. In just 1 week, Tiamat had won the hearts of everyone in Tempest and secured her stay there. However, there was only one problem. "I'm bored," Tiamat thought as she looked at the sky with a neutral expression. She was in the forest gathering some fruits and natural ingredients when that thought crossed her mind. Yes, Tiamat was completely bored. There was nothing interesting going on, and nothing interesting to do. She liked Tempest, and she disguised herself as a human to get closer to Rimuru, but she hardly saw Rimuru in the last few days. He was very busy with his leader duties, and she didn't want to get in the way. Tiamat sighed. "What should I do, I wonder? It will still be a long time before Milim is interested in Tempest, and I want to visit Ramirez after I find her a nice gift. She must have been very lonely without me." Tiamat crossed her arms, closed her eyes, and began to think about what Ramirez would like to receive as a gift. That girl might look all dignified, but she has pretty eccentric tastes. I don't think there's anything interesting in this world that Ramirez hasn't seen, at least for now. Wait, in this world? Tiamat immediately opened her eyes with a smile and slammed her fist into her palm. That's it. If there is nothing in this world that might be of interest to her, I must look in another world. She found her solution, both to find Ramirez's gift and to take away her boredom. But there was a problem. She couldn't just go to another world and leave her responsibilities in Tempest. That would be a big problem, that is, if she wasn't who she is. A curiosity about having a brother, who is also a nearly omnipotent god who likes to pamper his family, is that no matter what his family asked for, he would give it without thinking twice. This includes, of course, skills. Veldanava's origin skill was King of Information Akashic Record, and this skill gave Veldanava complete freedom to create any skill as he pleased. That's how he created Tiamat's origin skill and millions of other skills. Tiamat, when she was a human, in the last years of her life, had become a full-fledged otaku, and knowing Veldanava's power, she didn't let the opportunity pass. She asked Veldanava to create many anime skills for her while traveling together through the cosmos. Of course, she didn't do this just for her own sake, but also for the amusement of her children who watched her from beyond. With a childish smile, Tiamat made a cross sign with 2 fingers of each hand and thought of the skill she wanted to use. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. A cloud of smoke exploded beside her, and from the smoke, a perfect copy of Tiamat appeared. The two Tiamat faced each other, and greeted each other with a military salute. A/N, for those who forgot, is telepathy. Tiamat 02 reporting for duty. Cadet Tiamat 02, I have a mission for you. I'm all ears, General. Tiamat nodded in satisfaction at seeing her clone's attitude. Her clone was identical to Naruto's shadow clones, so she didn't have to worry about missing out on the village's news while she was away, because when she comes back and cancels the technique, she would have the clone's memories. I like your enthusiasm. Your mission is simple. Help the village the same way I've been doing while I'm out, and don't interfere with anything too big. Keep a low profile for now. If the Dryad comes to you wanting to discuss about Ramirez, play the mysterious goddess role and say it's not time yet. Was I clear? The clone saluted again. Clear as day, General. So what are you waiting for? Get to work. Yes, General. Tiamat's clone picked up the fruit basket that Tiamat had left on the floor and immediately began looking for more fruits, vegetables, and other natural foods. A lone tear trickled from Tiamat's eyes. Such passion and dedication? This girl will go far. She watched her clone disappear into the forest and smiled with an anxious expression. It will be her first time using her travel between worlds. She couldn't help but be excited and undecided about where to go. She spent a few minutes thinking about where she can go to get a good present, and then finally made up her mind. Oh, I already know which world to go to. And I can still get a new daughter. She closed her eyes and began to concentrate. Unlike the skills she received from Veldanova, the ability to travel between worlds was given by Poe, who she theorized to be an angel, or perhaps a certain dragon warrior, so it was not a skill. Fortunately, when she was reborn, she instinctively knew how to use the world travel. Thinking about where she wanted to go, Tiamat left. There were no portals or any fancy effects, she just disappeared. Chapter 14, The Curious Child and the Goddess. After wishing to go to another world, Tiamat was instantly taken where she wanted. Tiamat felt water under her knees and an unfamiliar atmosphere. She opened her eyes slowly and found herself standing in the middle of a small lake. Tiamat's thoughts and movements were quite lethargic, as if she had just woken up from a deep sleep. Sensing that something was to come, Tiamat closes her eyes again, and countless memories flood her mind. I see. So these are the memories of Tiamat of this world. The memories Tiamat gained showed her the history of her existence in the world in which she is present. Through her memories, she is certain that Tiamat did not actually exist in this world, and that her identity was created from her arrival. In this world, Tiamat is of a magical race called the Kami, in other words, God. The race of gods in this world, as in most other worlds, is the race that reigns supreme, controlling the rules and laws that govern the world. In the beginning of it all, the world she is now in was a dead planet. However, from the collapse of supernovas that exploded around the universe where the dead planet stood, an almost limitless amount of cosmic energy was spouted onto the planet, and from this dense cosmic energy, which in the future would be known as magic energy, the first gods emerged. She was the first god to be born, along with her brother, Ankh-Serum, the god of death and destruction. Tiamat was happy to learn that her powers, as well as her divinity, were unchanged. She remains as the primordial goddess of the sea of life, motherhood, dragons, and chaos. A/N, in some mythology websites she is described as the goddess of oceans and chaos, but on other websites, she is also said to be the goddess of dragons and the river of life. So I just put it all together. The two are brother and sister, but they are the complete opposite of each other. While Tiamat was a friendly goddess, Ankh-Serum was a strict and apathetic god. But that doesn't mean her brother was evil. Ankh-Serum just took his duties very seriously and had no room for complacency, like a certain god of the underworld in Greek mythology. After Tiamat and Ankh-Serum, many other gods were born, and the age of the gods had arrived. When the age of the gods began, the once dead planet was filled with life. Oceans were created, endless forests were born, and the first animals and insects began to appear, and not long after, magical creatures began to be born because of the immense amount of magic energy in the atmosphere. Seeing life begin to spread, many gods created their own magical creatures, and among the magical creatures created by the gods, those at the apex were the dragons, created by Tiamat. The age of the gods lasted for millennia, until, for some reason, the gods began to disappear, one by one. When most of the gods had disappeared, the first humans were born. And it was at this time that Tiamat went to sleep, and only woke up now. So that's why I feel so sleepy, Tiamat thought as she finished reviewing her new memories. While still lost in thought, she heard a small childish cry, and Tiamat opened her eyes again. A few feet away from where she was, a small blonde girl was slumped on the floor as she looked at her in amazement, fear, and with a hint of wonder and curiosity. The little girl had short blonde hair and deep green eyes, and she wore torn and badly sewn pieces of clothing that were completely dirty. Why is she so scared? Wait, oh, I see. Tiamat immediately realized why the little girl looked so scared. Tiamat was not using her human form, but in her femme fatale form. It was normal for the child to be scared. Seeing the frightened child while trembling slightly, Tiamat decided not to approach her, and to remain where she was. She looked at the child, and smiled with a friendly hand wave, trying to make the girl feel more at ease. Cute.jpg. Don't be afraid, child. I will do you no harm, Tiamat said telepathically, and the child jumped in surprise as she heard a voice in her head. Tiamat couldn't help but giggle at the child looking around trying to find who said that. I'm right in front of you, you know. The little girl stares at her with wide eyes. She didn't seem to be afraid anymore, or rather, her curiosity overcame her fear in the face of the unknown. The little girl got up slowly, and asked shyly, "Excuse me, are you a fairy?" Looking at the little girl's excited and hopeful expression, Tiamat laughed a little. What part of her looks like a fairy? Phew, I'm flattered, but I'm not a fairy, darling. Hearing that she was not a fairy, the little girl looked visibly depressed. But I'm something much cooler than a fairy. The little girl immediately lifted her face with stars in her eyes. Am much cooler than a fairy. Tiamat nodded proudly. Fufu? Yeah, much cooler, but before that, my name is Tiamat. What's yours, little one? My name is Mavis. Chapter 15, Mavis and Problems. Tiamat, look at this, I did it. Mavis exclaimed with stars in her eyes. In her hand, there was a small ball of water floated. Well done, sweetie, you are learning very fast. Tiamat clapped her hands, congratulating her with a smile. It's been a week since Mavis and Tiamat met. Tiamat was surprised to discover who the little child was. She was none other than the founder of Fairy Tale, and also, one of the characters with the saddest story in the series. From beginning to end, her life was full of sadness and loss, but she never wavered. That was why, upon learning who the child was, Tiamat decided to teach her magic. From then on, every day Mavis came to visit Tiamat at the lake. Tiamat has chosen to remain in the lake as an entity cooler than fairies, so that Mavis has a place to escape to when she needs it, and to slowly earn her trust. She knew that Mavis had no parents, she was basically a slave in the Wizards Guild that existed on the island. If Tiamat could, she would have already adopted her, but unfortunately, nothing was easy. Mavis was extremely innocent, but at the same time, extremely intelligent. She may be doing it subconsciously, but Tiamat senses that Mavis was wary of her. Probably the constant abuse made her subconsciously wary. Of course, that doesn't mean Mavis would antagonize anyone, but to get Mavis to open up to her, Tiamat needs to show that she is in no way a danger to her, but a safe haven. That's why, as much as Tiamat wants to take Mavis and leave this place, she can't. Mavis is still so young, and everything she knows is there. She sure doesn't want to leave, not yet at least, even if it was hell. Doing so would cause Tiamat to completely lose the trust she had built up with Mavis. Thinking of the tragedies the girl will face, Tiamat couldn't help but feel extremely irritated. There was only one way to make Mavis live a happier life. And that is, defeating her archenemy, fate. Yes, for Tiamat, fate itself is her enemy. As she already experienced in Tensura, she did what she could, but Milim, who she considers a daughter, still got emotionally hurt considerably because of the bitch named Fate. She did what she could, but somehow things still went their way as it was written despite her interference. Of course, not everything followed what was written. Because of her interference, Ramirez did not have to be cursed with an endless cycle of reincarnations. So there's a considerable chance that she could change Mavis's fate. Tiamat knows that fate is a force of nature and that it doesn't matter if someone has a good or bad life. All that matters is the ending. As a force of nature, all he cares about is his role within the universe. However, that doesn't change the fact that Tiamat wants to rid the girl of such a destiny. Does that make her a selfish person? For trying to change the fate of one person, even when countless others suffer the same fate, or worse? Completely yes. But, unfortunately, she cannot save everyone. She is not a messiah. She is a mother goddess, and she will do her best to see that those she considers her children have a happy ending. Tiamat knew that she has to be careful. There are a lot of problems with trying to change fate. Fate is a conceptual force, therefore, it is above the divine realm itself. If Tiamat abuses it too much, fate will start to act against her until she is eliminated. Tiamat is not afraid of retaliation, but fate is something that plays dirty. She will never clean up the mess herself, but rather form a way for others to deal with the problem while she helps them from behind. For example, twisting the fabric of fate so that Tiamat is seen as an evil entity, making the whole world turn against her. And of course, there would be heroes to take her down with the famous plot armor and power of friendship, which is nothing more than a super boost given by fate itself. Not to mention that, as much as she is powerful, she is not omnipotent, that is, she is also bound by the laws and rules of the world. The laws that applied in the Tensura universe do not apply here. In short, she cannot use most of the powers she has gained in Tensura. She is still at the peak of this world's power ranking, but without all her power it greatly limits what she can do. With a sigh, Tiamat resumes her lesson with Mavis. Now sweetie, how about I teach you some really cool spells now that you know how to conjure? At the same time, you can help me with my speech practice. What do you think? Tiamat suggested. Tiamat didn't even have time to finish what she was saying when Mavis started bouncing in excitement. Really? Are you really going to teach me cool spells? What do I have to do? Tiamat smiled. How can children be so sweet? What Tiamat didn't know is that fate didn't need to act against her, as her awakening caused an uproar in many places. Several kilometers away from where she was, several individuals and beings noticed her awakening. A man with dark blue hair and dark tattooed skin covered his body with a long black robe, looking at the horizon with a wild smile. Another man with dark hair and serene dark eyes was also looking at the horizon. His eyes radiated a light of hope. A scarlet-haired woman also noticed her awakening and was looking at the horizon angrily. All dragons and other entities also felt Tiamat's awakening. Unbeknownst to Tiamat, just by existing, fate is already changing beyond recognition. Chapter 16, Mavis Vermilion. My name is Mavis Vermilion, and I'm 6 years old, but don't underestimate me, because I'm part of a mage guild. Oi, Mavis, what are you doing standing there? Go clean the damn floor. I hear a voice behind me, and before I can respond, I feel a foot kick me in the back, making me fall flat on my face. Ouch. Stop loitering, scum. Trying to ignore the pain in my back and face, I turn my head to see who kicked me. He is rather old. He has dark, receding hair that was kept cropped short to his head, a long nose, and a large, jetting chin covered in a trimmed beard. On his face on the left side, there was a tattoo resembling a bird's wing. His name is Zizulf, the guild master of the Red Lizards Guild, the guild I live in. I work as a handyman in the guild as Papa and Mama, who were both members of the guild and who passed away not long ago, apparently owed a lot of debt to the guild. I hurriedly stand up and immediately bow down in front of him. I am sorry, Master Zizulf-sama. TCH? I don't want to hear about excuses. Get back to cleaning. And when you're done, go to the lake inside the forest and bring water. The lake inside the forest? But Master Zizulf-sama? The forest is dangerous. Mom and Dad always told me to dash. Bang, asterisk. I wince at the sound of his fist hitting the table and shut up, his eyes looking at me with complete contempt and indifference. Shut up? I don't give a fuck what your dead parents said. Just do as I say if you want to have something to eat. Did I make myself clear? Why yes, sir. The guild master leaves without another word, then I hear a comment from one of the members right behind me. Don't worry, Mavis. No animal will want to eat you with that smell of you. Ha ha ha. With that, everyone starts laughing while staring at me with disdain. My body starts to shake and tears fill my eyes. I cannot cry. If I cry, I won't get to meet a fairy. Dad and Mom always told me that fairies don't go near crybabies. I force a smile on my face and start mopping the floor again as if nothing happened. Yeah, there's no reason to cry. This is just my daily life, I'm used to it, I thought, convincing myself. I sweep the floor until it was sparkling, which took a couple of hours, and then I head outside. Outside of the guild, a few meters away, there is a well with a bucket. Approaching the well, I stand up on my tiptoes and peer inside. Sunlight entered the well and reflected on the water inside it. There was water in the well, and it was far from dry. I bite my bottom lip. There was water in the well, but Master Zizulf said to go to the lake for water. Unfortunately, if I want to eat, I must do as he asks. So I pick up the bucket next to the well and start walking towards inside the forest. As the bucket is a bit heavy, it's hard to go fast. I hope I can get back in time so I don't get scolded. The forest is scary. There are many different noises coming from all over the place. I remember Dad and Mom warning me about scary monsters living in the woods. But I can't go back. Not without a bucket full of water. It's been a few hours since I entered the forest, so according to my calculations, I must already be close to the lake according to the map I saw in one of the books in the guild. After a few more minutes of walking, I finally arrived at the lake. The scenery around the lake was beautiful, like something out of a fairy tale. Would there be fairies in such a place? I immediately shake my head. I will think about it later. I need to get water and get back before it gets dark. I run to the edge of the lake carefully and set down the bucket inside the lake. With the bucket now filled with water, I pull it up with force and, with some difficulty, I manage to lift it. As I hold the bucket full of water against my body, a flash of light blinds me. Surprised, I accidentally drop the bucket and I hear it fall into the lake. Oh no, the guild master will be furious. I have to get the bucket somehow. The strange light disappeared after a few seconds and I could see again. My curiosity told me to find out what that light was, but getting the bucket back was more important. I was preparing to dive into the deep lake to get the bucket back, but then, I had a strange feeling, and, looking towards the center of the lake instinctively, I saw someone standing over the lake. The lake was deep, but not big. The person was close enough to me that I could see her in detail. It was a woman, I think Mom's age. She has long light blue hair, and two giant horns that remind me of ram-like horns on her head. Instead of clothes, she seems to have scales on her arms and legs that hide her private parts. She looked human, but at the same time, she didn't. Was she one of the monsters that Mom and Dad warned me about? The lake monster? I've read stories of human-like monsters who tricked them to eating them. My body immediately started shaking with fear. I needed to run, but my body wouldn't move. Fortunately, the monster was strangely staring at the sky with eyes closed without noticing me. Before I could move, the monster moved first, which made me let out a startled cry in surprise. I immediately clamped my hands over my mouth, hoping the monster didn't hear me, but when the monster opened its eyes and looked at me, I knew. I won't be able to run away, I'll be eaten. Sorry, Mom and Dad? Sorry fairies, I didn't get to meet you all. I shivered as I stared at the monster, waiting for my end. But strangely, she didn't do anything, just stare at me with what I can only assume was amusement and pity. The monster smiled at me as it waved. And then, I hear a voice. Don't be afraid, child. I will do you no harm. It was a beautiful voice, almost hypnotically calm. My body strangely stopped shaking and my fear subsided. My eyes widen and I immediately look around for the owner of the voice, only to hear an amused giggle. I'm right in front of you, you know. I hear the voice again, this time with a teasing tone. With my eyes even wider, I look at the monster, and I realize that she was the one talking to me somehow as I didn't see her open her mouth. That can only mean one thing. Magic? Then a thought crossed my mind. What if that monster is actually a fairy? No one has ever seen a fairy, so there's no telling she might not be one. After all, what other than a fairy would live in such a beautiful and magical place, similar to the fairy tales Mom read to me at bedtime? I slowly stand up, still a little tense, and ask, "Excuse me, are you a fairy?" The fairy looked a little confused by my question, so she laughed a little. "What's so funny?" I pouted and waited for her to answer me. Phew, I'm flattered, but I'm not a fairy, darling." "She's not a fairy?" I couldn't help but be saddened and disappointed by her response. I really thought she was a fairy. But I'm something much cooler than a fairy. I look at her in disbelief as she puffs out her chest in confidence. "Am much cooler than a fairy." She nodded with a smile. "If she's cooler than a fairy then, a super fairy? Foo? Yeah, much cooler. But before that, my name is Tiamat. What's yours, little one?" My name is Mavis." On this day, I had no idea how much my life would change. Chapter 17, Special New Year Chapter / A Children's Bond. A quick explanation of something important I forgot to mention. As stated in the Chapter 15, Tiamat no longer has access to the Tensura skill system, nor does she have access to the skills that Veldanava gave her, as she is in another universe where the rules are different. But that doesn't mean she doesn't have new abilities. As she is in the world of fairy tale as a dragon goddess in addition to her original deities, she can use all existing elements that dragons use, for example. Unfortunately, I was unable to do my promise of a 3500 to 4000 chapter as unforeseen circumstances arose. This chapter is exactly 3000 words. Since I couldn't do what I promised, the next one will be between 2000 to 2500 words. In the middle of the ocean, on Tenro Island, Tiamat continued her lessons with Mavis for a month. While Tiamat taught her the ways of magic, Mavis helped with Tiamat's vocal training. Aiou, warming her throat, Tiamat's supernaturally beautiful voice resounded around the lake. Good. Now that you've warmed up, let's start," Mavis exclaimed livelily. Tiamat sighed lightly with a smile as she saw Mavis acting like a teacher. She was sitting elegantly on a rock near the lake, while Mavis was facing her while drawing letters in the air with magic. "Since you've just warmed up your throat, try a simple sentence, such as," with her finger glowing faintly golden in color, Mavis wrote in the air. In the air, the phrase "Hello, I'm Tiamat, nice to meet you," appeared. Tiamat nodded and prepared to speak. "Hello, I'm Tiamat, nice to meet you." Mavis placed her hand on her chin and pondered. "You've improved a lot, Tiamat-san, but you're still not there." Tiamat dropped her shoulders with a rather depressed expression. During the month, Tiamat trained her throat and vocal cords almost every day with Mavis. Now she could speak in long sentences, but her tongue still froze a little in the middle of sentences. It should be remembered that Tiamat always used telepathy to converse, and only a few times she used her voice to communicate. Not to mention that her body in its simplest form, femme fatale, was not an exact copy of a human, but a hybrid of dragon and human. Her throat was not designed to speak, however much she can train herself to do it. It was a little strange that she had to train so hard to be able to speak properly while even her brother, Veldanava, was able to speak perfectly when he took a human form for the first time. What she didn't know is that this flawed characteristic of hers comes from the original Tiamat herself, but since she rarely needed to use her voice to speak, she never gave importance to it. A/N, real reason it's mo. Seeing Tiamat depressed, Mavis immediately panicked. "Yeah, don't worry, you've improved a lot. In no time you will be able to speak normally. You just need practice, I guarantee." Tiamat, seeing Mavis panic, giggled and looked at her tenderly. It was cute to see Mavis, a 6-year-old child, worried about her as an adult would. But at the same time, it was sad. Mavis's maturity has developed beyond her age not only because of her high intelligence but also because of the hostile environment she lives in that forced her to mature. As cute as it is, a child should behave like a child, not an adult. Perhaps that is the reason why adult Mavis was so childish in the anime, as she never really had a childhood. What worried Tiamat the most was that Mavis still hadn't opened up to her. She could see that Mavis liked her, but it never went beyond a simple friendly exchange. Proof of this is that Mavis never got very close to Tiamat. Mavis always kept a distance of at least 1 meter from Tiamat and didn't dare cross that line. Mavis always does that unconsciously, without even realizing her own cautious nature. Mavis, seeing Tiamat laughing at her, pouted. "Mao, don't laugh at me." As the two played, nearby bushes moved. Mavis caught sight of the movement and immediately she walked away from the bush and stood by Tiamat. Who's there?" Tiamat's eyes widened and a sense of happiness flooded her being. As much as it was out of fear, Mavis approached her, close enough to touch. It looked like Mavis wanted to cling to her as her little hand kept trying to hold Tiamat's hand, but she probably was too afraid and hesitant to do so. Realizing that, a huge smile grew on Tiamat's face. As mature as Mavis is, a child is still a child. A frightened child will always try to look for something that makes them feel safe, and Mavis immediately rushed to Tiamat's side as she got scared. That was a big progress. Her effort has finally paid off. Seeing that as an opportunity, Tiamat held Mavis's hand lightly before Mavis could pull it back again. Mavis immediately shivered at the contact, but she didn't seem to want to let go of Tiamat's hand. It's okay, it's just a curious little guest, like you, Tiamat said reassuringly. Listening to Tiamat as she held her hand, Mavis visibly calmed down. A curious guest, like me. Mavis tilted her head. Tiamat nodded with a smile. She then turned to the bushes that had moved, and with a slight movement of her finger, a childish scream was heard. A small figure then levitated out of the bushes as it struggled to free itself from Tiamat's telekinesis. The small figure in question was a little girl Mavis's age. Wearing a red school uniform, she has brown hair that she keeps tied up in twin tails and olive green eyes. Let me go, you monster. Tiamat knew who the little girl was, but it was her first time seeing her. On the other hand, Mavis couldn't be more familiar with her. Zera. Mavis exclaimed in surprise. The little girl who was spying on them was none other than Zera, the daughter of the master of the Red Lizards Guild, the guild that Mavis was also part of. I said let go of me, monster. Don't you know who my father is? He'll tear you to pieces if you hurt me. Zera screamed as she looked at Tiamat. Tiamat huffed lightly. The little girl, Zera, looked like a rabid dog as she screamed, but Tiamat could see that she was shaking with fear as she forced herself to be brave. Her face was slightly deformed as if she was about to cry. With her telekinesis, Tiamat carefully placed Zera on the ground in front of her and Mavis. Thinking that her threat had taken effect, Zera tried to get up, but her legs seemed to have no strength. Beneath her cocky facade, she was genuinely terrified. Mavis immediately leaves Tiamat's side and runs to try and help Zera to her feet. Zera, what are you doing here? Does Master Zizulf know you're here? Before Mavis can touch her, however, Zera smacks Mavis's hand away and glares at her with anger. Don't touch me, you germ! I don't want you to contaminate me. Mavis drew back with a sad look and an aching hand. And isn't it obvious why I'm here? With you sneaking out every day towards the forest, it was clear that something was suspicious. And what did I discover after following you? You playing with a monster? In addition to being a useless germ, it seems that you are also an evil witch. Zera said accusingly. Just wait until I tell my dad. He will dash. Tiamat is not a monster. Mavis screamed, taking Zera by surprise. Zera looked stunned by Mavis's interruption. Even Tiamat was surprised. Mavis's current expression was one neither Tiamat nor Zera had seen. Mavis was angry. Zera couldn't help but shudder since Mavis never spoke back to her or her father. What who do you dash Zera tried to speak but could only stutter. This had never happened before to her, so she didn't know what to do. Mavis then spoke over her again. Tiamat is not a monster? She is. She paused for a moment, trying to formulate a response. Tiamat is a good goat person. Tiamat nearly fell back at Mavis's response. It was only natural that Mavis didn't know what she was, since she never really said, and Mavis never asked. Hearing Mavis's absurd response, Zera was dumbfounded. All her fear and confusion were turned into indignation. Zera pointed the finger at Mavis and shouted, "Ha! Do you think I'm an idiot? How the hell is she not a monster with those huge horns and scales? And a goat person? That doesn't even exist. How can you be sure that a goat person doesn't exist? Just because you've never seen one before? Also, I don't care if you curse or hit me, but I won't let you talk badly about her." Mavis answered back without backing off. Since when is saying a monster is a monster offensive? It's the same thing as saying you're a germ, you germ? Stupid. The two continued their argument with Mavis defending Tiamat, and Zera angrily hurling curses at Tiamat and Mavis. Tiamat just stood there watching the two while feeling rather left out. Zera, who a moment ago was shaking in fear, was now cursing and angrily screaming about how she was a monster as if she wasn't even there. She didn't care much about the situation in front of her, since it was just a childish fight. But isn't it too much to forget that she was also there? Tiamat sighed, but she didn't stop the small dispute and let the two face each other. This little fight was very beneficial for Mavis and Zera. As much as she hid it, Mavis was a well of insecurities and trauma. Now, she was facing one of the roots of said traumas and insecurities, which in this case is Zera. On the other hand, Zera has always been spoiled and treated like a princess. For the first time someone was talking back to her, and it was none other than the person she looked down on the most. This would help Zera get off the high horse and be more humble. After a good few minutes, the two finally stopped yelling and they just kept staring at each other while breathing heavily. Zera looked like she wanted to continue, but before she could, Tiamat's stern voice was heard. Enough. She finally seemed to remember Tiamat's presence, as immediately upon hearing her voice, Zera froze in place. Oh no, in my rage, I completely forgot she was here. She listened to everything? What do I do now? Zera thought, fearful of what Tiamat would do to her. Mavis, on the other hand, seemed to finally realize what she'd just done. Oh no, what did I do? If Zera tells Master Zizulf that I answered her, I will be severely punished. Mavis thought apprehensively. Tiamat looked at the two of them and sighed. It was quite obvious to her what was going through the minds of the two children. They were so alike but at the same time so different. Zera, that's your name, right? Tiamat started with Zera, who immediately looked down as she trembled. Seeing the girl so terrified, Tiamat spoke softly to appease the child's mind. As Mavis said, I am not a monster and I have no intention of harming you. Tiamat's natural voice was, in a way, magical, as her voice conveyed not only words but intentions and feelings as well. Feeling strangely safer, as if she was sure Tiamat wouldn't hurt her, Zera plucked up the courage to face her up. If you're not a monster, then what are you? She asked hesitantly. Zera understood that Tiamat would not harm her, but she was still on her guard against Tiamat and was not afraid to face her. It was like a small squirrel facing off against a huge dragon. Tiamat had to hold back her laugh as she watched Zera play brave while her body was still shaking nervously. Putting the slightly comical situation aside, Tiamat was also surprised as it was impressive that a 6-year-old girl had so much innate courage. I want to know too, Mavis exclaimed with obvious curiosity. She always wondered what Tiamat was, but she never had the heart to ask. Seeing the two so curious about what she was, Tiamat decided to answer both of them, as it wasn't exactly a secret. I can tell you, children, but first, I want you two to shake hands and make up, Tiamat demanded. Mavis didn't seem bothered by the idea and immediately nodded her head excitedly. Zero, on the other hand. Why you want me to touch this germ? No way. Tiamat sighed at Zera's behavior. Then with a snap of her fingers, a white light envelopes Mavis and in the next second, her body seems to glow from how clean she was. Now that she's clean, there shouldn't be any problems, right? Tiamat replied with a smile that said that her demand was not up for debate. Zera was stunned. She had never seen such convenient magic. How did you do that? Tiamat giggled at her dumbfounded face. Since last month, Mavis has never been really dirty as I helped her wash in the lake. As for why she looked dirty, when she was not. If you want to know, then you know what to do. Wow, Tiamat-san. That was the biggest sentence you've said so far. Mavis clapped her hands in glee. Tiamat smiled slightly, her cheeks a little flushed. She felt proud of her achievement but also felt a little embarrassed by Mavis's praise. While Mavis continued to praise an embarrassed Tiamat, Zera was in an internal quandary. She didn't want to touch Mavis, but she also wanted to know not only what Tiamat was, but also the strange magic she used. The thing is, Zera didn't call Mavis a germ because Mavis was dirty, but because she didn't even see Mavis as a human being in the first place. Her father and guild members always told her that if she touched a germ as low as Mavis, she might get sick or become stupid. As Tiamat has already seen the series, of course, she knew this was the case. Zera grew up surrounded by people who let her behave however she wanted, and even taught and encouraged her to mistreat Mavis. But deep down, Zera knew what she was doing was wrong. She just convinced herself that what she was doing was right, as she was afraid of becoming an outcast like Mavis. Tiamat's goal was simple, to shatter the twisted beliefs that Zera's father and guild members have nurtured in Zera's head. She was a bright little girl full of courage and talent like Mavis, but she was slowly being corrupted by the filth scum she called family. As Tiamat expected, the child's curiosity was stronger than the distorted beliefs in her head as Zera, after a few moments of hesitation, said in frustration, "Ugh. Okay, I'll do as you say." Tiamat innocently smiled on the outside at Zera's decision. Internally, however, a Tiamat with a glowy pair of glasses smiled smugly. Phew, just as planned. With a tch, Zera turned her face away with a displeased expression, but offered Mavis a handshake. Mavis, feeling hesitant about taking Zera's hands, looked to Tiamat, who gives her a nod with a reassuring smile. Unfortunately, even with Tiamat's encouragement, she was still hesitant. Looking at Zera's hand, an incomprehensible fear got over her. Oi, you germ? Don't make me wait. My arm is starting to hurt. She's right, I can't let fear overcome me. I can do this. Mavis thought with determination. Mavis then did something that astounded both Zera and Tiamat. She slapped her own cheeks with all her might. Her cheeks quickly turned bright red as she held her tears. Seeing that, Zera felt that the girl in front of her was really stupid. Oi, why the hell did you do that? Or rather, are you okay? Mavis nodded. She was fine. Stepping forward with newfound determination, Mavis takes Zera's hand with a smile. I am fine, thanks for worrying. I knew you were kind, Zera. Hehe. Seeing Mavis's sincere smile, Zera felt strangely embarrassed, but she didn't think that feeling was bad. Whatever, I'm only doing this because the goat woman demanded it. While the two seemed to have created a bond between them, Tiamat watched the two make up while wiping her tears with a handkerchief. This scene is so cute and heartwarming. I wish I had a camera with me right now. Comment. 31 Comment. Vote. Chapter 18, The Godmother Archenemy, Part 1. In the lake of Tenro Island, Mavis and Zera were sitting facing Tiamat. A goddess, Mavis and Zera exclaimed at the same time. Mavis looked delighted, her eyes as bright as stars. Zera, on the other hand, had a rather dubious expression. Tiamat puffed out her breasts with a proud smile. She was at least pleased with Mavis's reaction. Incredible? To think that Tiamat-san is a goddess? That never crossed my mind. Mavis said as she jumped livelily. She then stopped for a moment and tilted her head. What is a goddess? Zera looked at Tiamat with empty eyes, as if looking at a crazy person. Sorry, but it's a little hard to believe that. I'd be more likely to believe that you really are a goat person. Tiamat's confident smile faded. She wanted to shock the two children by telling her identity. She even made suspense. But ruining Tiamat's expectations, Mavis, despite reading in secret, didn't seem to know what a god was, and Zera immediately didn't believe her and looked at her as if she had screws loose. Tiamat knelt on the ground and began to make circles in the sand, depressed. Seeing Tiamat depressed for some reason, Mavis rushes to cheer her up. Don't worry, Tiamat-san. I'm sure you're super awesome as a fairy, right, Zera, she said, turning to Zera. Zera seemed to completely ignore the two with a bored expression, but she still responds to Mavis, a goddess, a goat person, I don't care. It's already getting late, I better get back home, or Dad will get mad. And also, she faced Tiamat, who was still depressed, and she sighed as if having an internal struggle to decide something. I won't say anything to Dad about her, or about you sneaking in here every day, for now. Zera, thrilled, Mavis ran to hug Zera but was quickly rebuffed. Don't touch me, worm. I'm only doing this because I want to learn the magic she said she would teach me, just for that and nothing more? Humph, Zera responded with a snort, then turned away with her arms crossed. Tiamat, who was watching their interaction, smiled in amusement. Fufu, Zera is such a tsundere. It felt like Zera was really fighting her inner demons and slowly opening her heart, and Tiamat felt proud of her. However, good things tend to be short-lived. Zera, who was facing towards the village, suddenly sees something in the distance. Is that smoke? Not only Zera, but Mavis had noticed as well. Yes, it's smoke. And it looks like it's coming from the village. As the two wondered about the reason for the smoke, several screams sounded in the distance, startling them. That smoke and screams. Has a fight broken out in the village? But there are no bandits on this island, just the villagers and 2 wizard guilds, Mavis analyzed. Listening to Mavis' analysis, something seemed to click in Zera's mind, as if she understood something. Oh no, I have to go back to the guild. Daddy? Everyone, Zera exclaimed, then ran at full speed toward where the smoke was coming from. Zera? Wait, Mavis wanted to stop her, but it was too late, Zera was already out of reach. Mavis wanted to run after Zera, but just as she was about to take the first step, she had a better idea. Turning to Tiamat, she pleaded, I don't know what's going on, but this smoke and the screams, something bad is happening in the village? Please help them, help Zera, Tiamat-san. Tiamat looked at Mavis, who was imploring her with a determined expression and smiled fondly. She then strokes Mavis in her hair and responds, sure, I'll help. A beaming smile appeared on Mavis's face at Tiamat's response. Okay, let's go then. Holding Mavis's tiny hand, Tiamat stands up and prepares to follow her, but then she freezes. Noticing Tiamat's strange behavior, Mavis became apprehensive. Tiamat-san, is everything okay? Tiamat didn't answer, then turned to the ocean with a frown. In the distance, in the middle of the ocean, a few kilometers from the island, a gigantic storm was fast approaching. Looking in the direction Tiamat was looking, Mavis was confused. A storm? But the stormy season is past, and I've never seen one as big as that one. This is no ordinary storm. Without taking her eye off the storm, Tiamat responded with a hint of irritation in her voice. What do you mean by that? Without giving Tiamat a chance to respond, a terrifying roar echoed across the ocean, making Mavis cower in fear. Tiamat-san, what was that? Tiamat was silent for a few seconds, and then she answered, a youngling, who needs to be disciplined. She then looked at Mavis, who looked terrified and hugged her, calming her down. Mavis, I want you to listen to me well. I won't be able to go with you, because the person behind that roar is probably after me. If I don't stop him, the entire island will disappear. Tiamat could hear Mavis's little heart race and hug her tighter. Don't worry, I can stop him easily, but it might take a while. You've learned enough from me to defend yourself against any fifth-rate mage. So, I need you to go without me. Go, and save Zera in my place. Tiamat released her from her embrace and stared into her eyes. Mavis still looked scared, but she nodded determinedly. Good, now go, Tiamat said with a proud smile. Okay, be careful, Tiamat-san. With that, Mavis took off running into the forest, going after Zera. Seeing Mavis disappear into the forest, Tiamat's smile fades, and a displeased expression appears on her pretty face. Facing the storm that was approaching, she lightly snapped her fingers, making a gale blow several meters around her. Then she whispers, bad children need to be punished. In the next moment, as if she melted into the water, she vanished. Chapter 19, The Godmother Archenemy, Part 2. In the middle of the ocean, several kilometers from Tenro Island, a giant storm was fast approaching, a storm so big that it could bring the complete destruction of the island, leaving only rubble to tell the story. A myriad of lightning danced among the dark clouds, and extremely powerful and violent winds beat against the ocean waters, creating huge ripples in the water. Such an apocalyptic storm was born only from the presence of a certain person, or rather, a dragon. From the stormy waters of the ocean, just beneath the raging storm, Tiamat takes shape through the water. She calmly looked up and waited. Not even a second later, from within the black clouds, a pair of glowing white eyes appeared, and then he roared. The roar was so powerful that the black clouds around him instantly dispersed, and his appearance was finally revealed. A mastodonic body, with the entire upper body covered in black, round, scales, which, in turn, are decorated by spiraling, blue markings. His lower body, specifically his chin, chest, stomach, inner tail, thighs, and arms, are gray in color, and appear to be rather smooth. White and beady eyes, and his head is round and blunt with 4, large, elongated plates extending backward. His mouth is full of razor-sharp teeth, and, attached to his chin, is a protrusion that resembles an arrowhead. His large wings are feathery in appearance, akin to a bird's. The scales disappear at the end of his tail, which, in itself, ends in a stinger-esque shape. Tiamat, seeing him, narrows her eyes slightly. Acnologia, she murmured. She stood still, waiting for an attack, but unlike what she expected, Acnologia hovered in the air as he watched her. For a second, Tiamat thought he didn't come to fight, but then he spoke. I came here thinking there was finally someone worthy, but you, I know you. Tiamat raised an eyebrow. How the hell could he know her? Humans already existed when she created dragons, but she is much older than he is, and when he was born, she was already in hibernation. It was impossible for him to know her. When she was about to question him, however, she felt Acnologia's magical power go berserk and out of control, and felt unfathomable anger and hatred coming from him toward her. You, I remember? You were the beginning of everything? You cursed existence? I will consume you, and end it all. With a thunderous roar, Acnologia dives toward Tiamat with his tyrannical body. Seeing Acnologia heading towards her, Tiamat sighed. Of the mangas she had read, she knew that Acnologia had always been unstable, but the madness and hatred he was showing her were on another level. What the hell had she done to make him hate her so much? She had no idea, and she couldn't ask either, as Acnologia looked enraged beyond reason. Whatever. Let's just get this over with and come back. My children need me, Tiamat thought. Only half a second had passed from the moment Acnologia dove towards her, and he was already right above her with his mouth open, ready to devour her. Tiamat raised her arm with her hand open. Bad boy, she said, and then she gave Acnologia a slap on his muzzle. At the moment then the punch landed, a gigantic sonic boom was generated, and in the same instant, Acnologia's huge body was sent flying horizontally like a rag doll for hundreds of meters. The shock wave that Tiamat's punch created produced huge waves in the water, and swept the storm clouds, leaving a clear and sunny sky. That should be enough, Tiamat thought. Acnologia's consciousness was clouded and confused, everything was swirling, and he could feel a searing pain in his muzzle. After a moment, he regained consciousness and spread his wings, gaining stability. Ugh, what happened? He thought in confusion as he put his hand under his muzzle, which was badly damaged. Then he remembered. He was only a second away from eating that woman, but before he managed to eat her, he felt pain, and then everything went black. She almost made me lose consciousness with just one attack, he thought, and then a wild smile appeared on his face. With a flap of his wings, strong enough to create hurricanes, Acnologia flew at a tremendously high speed toward Tiamat again while laughing maniacally. On the other side, Tiamat watched the figure of Acnologia in the distance and frowned. That punch was strong enough to obliterate a few mountains. Tiamat hoped it would, at the very least, weaken Acnologia for a while, but it seems she underestimated him. Looks like I'm going to have to take this a little more seriously, Tiamat decided, her eyes glowing red. Chapter 19, The Godmother Archenemy, Part 2. In the middle of the ocean, several kilometers from Tenro Island, a giant storm was fast approaching, a storm so big that it could bring the complete destruction of the island, leaving only rubble to tell the story. A myriad of lightning danced among the dark clouds, and extremely powerful and violent winds beat against the ocean waters, creating huge ripples in the water. Such an apocalyptic storm was born only from the presence of a certain person, or rather, a dragon. From the stormy waters of the ocean, just beneath the raging storm, Tiamat takes shape through the water. She calmly looked up and waited. Not even a second later, from within the black clouds, a pair of glowing white eyes appeared, and then he roared. The roar was so powerful that the black clouds around him instantly dispersed, and his appearance was finally revealed. A mastodonic body, with the entire upper body covered in black, round, scales, which, in turn, are decorated by spiraling, blue markings. His lower body, specifically his chin, chest, stomach, inner tail, thighs, and arms, are gray in color, and appear to be rather smooth. White and beady eyes, and his head is round and blunt with four, large, elongated plates extending backward. His mouth is full of razor-sharp teeth, and, attached to his chin, is a protrusion that resembles an arrowhead. His large wings are feathery in appearance, akin to a bird's. The scales disappear at the end of his tail, which, in itself, ends in a stinger-esque shape. Tiamat, seeing him, narrows her eyes slightly. Acnologia, she murmured. She stood still, waiting for an attack, but unlike what she expected, Acnologia hovered in the air as he watched her. For a second, Tiamat thought he didn't come to fight, but then he spoke. I came here thinking there was finally someone worthy, but you, I know you. Tiamat raised an eyebrow. How the hell could he know her? Humans already existed when she created dragons, but she is much older than he is, and when he was born, she was already in hibernation. It was impossible for him to know her. When she was about to question him, however, she felt Acnologia's magical power go berserk and out of control, and felt unfathomable anger and hatred coming from him toward her. You, I remember? You were the beginning of everything? You cursed existence? I will consume you, and end it all. With a thunderous roar, Acnologia dives toward Tiamat with his tyrannical body. Seeing Acnologia heading towards her, Tiamat sighed. Of the mangas she had read, she knew that Acnologia had always been unstable, but the madness and hatred he was showing her were on another level. What the hell had she done to make him hate her so much? She had no idea, and she couldn't ask either, as Acnologia looked enraged beyond reason. Whatever. Let's just get this over with and come back. My children need me, Tiamat thought. Only half a second had passed from the moment Acnologia dove towards her, and he was already right above her with his mouth open, ready to devour her. Tiamat raised her arm with her hand open. "Bad boy," she said, and then she gave Acnologia a slap on his muzzle. At the moment then the punch landed, a gigantic sonic boom was generated, and in the same instant, Acnologia's huge body was sent flying horizontally like a rag doll for hundreds of meters. The shock wave that Tiamat's punch created produced huge waves in the water, and swept the storm clouds, leaving a clear and sunny sky. That should be enough, Tiamat thought. Acnologia's consciousness was clouded and confused, everything was swirling, and he could feel a searing pain in his muzzle. After a moment, he regained consciousness and spread his wings, gaining stability. Ugh, what happened? He thought in confusion as he put his hand under his muzzle, which was badly damaged. Then he remembered. He was only a second away from eating that woman, but before he managed to eat her, he felt pain, and then everything went black. She almost made me lose consciousness with just one attack, he thought, and then a wild smile appeared on his face. With a flap of his wings, strong enough to create hurricanes, Acnologia flew at a tremendously high speed toward Tiamat again while laughing maniacally. On the other side, Tiamat watched the figure of Acnologia in the distance and frowned. That punch was strong enough to obliterate a few mountains. Tiamat hoped it would, at the very least, weaken Acnologia for a while, but it seems she underestimated him. Looks like I'm going to have to take this a little more seriously, Tiamat decided, her eyes glowing red. Chapter 20. Read if you want. What flavor of ice cream do you like? Hey guys. A small announcement, more like an explanation of what I will do from now on with this book. For almost 2 years, I've been suffering from a lot of depression, and recently it's gotten much worse. That's why I've been seeing a psychologist for the last few weeks. And a day ago, a user from here responded to my comment on another book, asking if I would continue writing. The answer was, not for now, because I don't feel like writing, everything I write seems bad. But then he replied about continuing Tiamat, which was more of a chill and easy story. That's when I decided to talk to my psychologist, who is also my friend, about my writing activity. He didn't know previously because I never said it. And the conversation I had with him was enlightening to say the least. It turns out that my procrastination of abandoning books and starting new ones from scratch may be largely because of my depression, not just with writing BTW, but with basically almost everything I do. I'm not going to go into details here, because it's going to be long and no one wants to know about it. In short, the objective is to ensure that I can remain constantly active in a certain activity, to work on my psychology. It's a simple exercise, but one that he thinks will do me a lot of good in the long term. In his words, it won't be easy. Anyone who is used to procrastination for a long time, continuing with an activity for a long time is torturous. So I need to stay strong. God, I feel like a heroin addict. That said, as I agreed with him, I would continue this book. I won't guarantee the quality of the chapters, but I will literally force myself to be constant, even if the chapter turns out shitty. I will decide on a posting date. I haven't yet decided whether it will be weekly, daily, or every 2 days, because the goal is to be constant. Anyway, if you still like this story, I'll keep you updated.